There we go.
All right, what you got for us?
We are live.
We are live.
Everybody survived the storms last night?
Barely.
It was legitimately raining sideways.
How about that hail? That was that thing like 6 inches in diameter or something?
It's super sketchy. Thank God that didn't happen near us, though. Like, that wasn't near me whatsoever. So,
You'd have
like 2
That'd be
hours.
small pieces that melted together, like in a ditch or something, like a Yeti cup, you know, when you put your water in it. Yeah.
When all your ice cubes are just one.
Yeah, they're just like,
Yeah.
If you got hit by that thing, damage to your roof or your car would be the least of your concerns.
Dude, I was seeing pictures
like
like fairly regularly of like tennis ball size hail. Like, everybody was posting that stuff up. Ice cube like sized hail, not like Ice Cube from NWA, but like the regular just ice cubes out of your
Ice
freezer.
Cube.
Regular, yeah.
You know.
What do you got for us, Dion?
Speaking of ice cubes,
This ought to be good.
my question is, what is your guys' death row meal?
Or what?
Death
what's
row
your
meal,
death row
last
meal?
meal.
Yeah, like you're about to get the lethal injection. What are you eating?
I'm going out via firing squad first and foremost.
Oh,
if it has to be done, firing squad it is. I'm getting a filet mignon, medium, at like Capitol Grill, Morton's. Getting like prime filet mignon with a side of garlic whipped mashed potatoes. I believe that's some sort of like red wine demi-glaze to go with it. That's yeah.
I can't really blame you on that choice.
Okay. Well, you asked. I answered.
We know JT's answer is going to be like Arby's or Buffalo Wild Wings. One of the two. Maybe a combination of both.
That's actually what I was going to say. Like, it's gonna be some wings probably and a handle of rum. Yeah. You want dessert? No, I'm good.
I don't know what mine would be. I think a fillet sounds good.
You get sea bass. Let's be honest. Every time we go in, we're like, "Oh, how's the sea bass?" Like, what?
What's the sea
Big
bass?
sea bass guy.
Yeah.
Kick his ass, sea bass.
Kick his ass,
Yeah,
sea
bass.
bass.
Sea bass is like the fillet of the sea, man.
Yeah, I've heard you. You've literally told me that exact
No,
line
actually,
70 times.
chicken parmesan. My wife makes
Really?
incredible chicken parmesan. Yeah, that's my go-to, man.
Nice.
I mean, if I'm trying to have like some comfort food,
Really?
the big old like double chicken parmesan, some Alfredo noodles.
I would like a nice glass of red wine. You know.
I
to
want
go
a
with
bottle.
mine.
A couple.
Yeah, a
bottles.
bottle. Yeah, Magnum.
You're dying here.
No, it's
Yeah, right. I would like
what's
to
it?
have a
A
tomahawk
Methuselah.
ribeye.
A Methuselah,
Yeah,
right? Like the big bottle, bigger than a Magnum. You know,
I'd like to have that big tomahawk ribeye I had in Vegas that one time.
Yeah.
And then I used the bone to break out, and then nobody's going to kill me.
You could. That was
I mean,
a
that bone.
significant.
Yeah.
I mean, it was huge.
Dion, you've got to answer your own question.
Mine is from my favorite restaurant, McDonald's. And it is a 10-piece McNugget, 2 regular cheeseburgers, a Big Mac, 2 large fries, an apple pie, an Oreo McFlurry, and a large Coke and a large Sprite.
Are you in Gin Pop and you just ordered for everybody?
Yeah. They won't even
My
have. They'll
family's
just leave
coming.
you in there. You're gonna kill yourself with that.
That's like my kids' That'd be what my kids would
the way I
order
wanna go
for
out,
sure.
is buy
Sophia,
McDonald's.
for sure. Sophia would be like, nah, McDonald's,
The
probably.
the first half of your order was our actual order when we go to get McDonald's for our kids.
I know. My wife gets
Same.
mad at me. She says, who like spent $60 at McDonald's yesterday? I'm like, I did. I just because sometimes I roll in and if we've been drinking, I'm like, just give me the left side of the menu.
Oh my gosh, JT, $60 for
All right.
McDonald's. They're gonna have
Let's
your
get
photo hanging on the wall.
Well,
All right,
Yeah.
send it.
Let's get her rolling.
Let's get her going.
The Wes Buck Show.
It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. This is the biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred.
Speaking his mind.
I've never had a problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way.
Exploring hot topics.
Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do.
And spreading the gospel of drag racing.
I respect the history. I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing.
The West Buck Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Supposed to have music playing, I think. I can't remember. Oh my goodness, my bad.
Big of a deal.
Well, it feels like it needs to go a little bit of music in the background, right? I just wanted a little bit of something. Hey, gang, what's going on? West Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. I don't know about you guys, but it feels like my normal go-to line is, how can it already be April or whatever? But don't you feel like this year's had a pretty good pace? Like, it feels like a lot's happened, but there's a lot left.
Kicks off, man. It's like, hold on,
right? I agree.
That's how I feel.
I'm having a little bit of trouble wrapping my head around the fact that it's the middle of April somehow, some way. I don't mean to be like cliche, but the last thing I really remember rallying around or whatever was Christmas. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's together and you got this big landmark event, and then the year happens and you're going 500 miles an hour. Where does the time go? However, like I was saying, it does feel like this year's been pretty well paced. I mean, we're 4 or 5 NHRA races into the season almost. The PDRA's got one under the belt. Midwest Drag Racing Series got one under their belt. NMCA, a lot of stuff's going on, man. I mean, it's all been by and large positive. I mean, it just feels like if you think back to where we were a couple of years ago, trying to do this show or trying to do anything, like, it was you took a lot of work to get yourself pumped up, and like, you're working hard to find the silver lining or whatever. Whereas now, I mean, there's just a lot of really good stuff happening in the sport. I mean, we're going to touch on all sorts of things today, and I want to thank everybody for being here. As always, we love seeing you. We love having this drag racing conversation, and we literally could not do it without you guys. So thank you so much. Remember, if you're listening along on Facebook, smash that like button. Make sure you're getting notified anytime we post a piece of content, anytime we go live. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome. Thanks for being here. Make sure you subscribe. Smash that subscribe button. Hit the bell again so you get notified anytime we go live. And if you're following along via podcast on any of the different platforms, we love to have you, and thank you for being a part of this. Maybe leave us a comment, leave us a review. 5 stars only. The 5 stars only. We don't want any of that. I would like to be on the high side of that. We just want 6 million 5-star reviews and nothing else. But leave us a review, tell a friend. It makes a huge difference. Screenshot it, send it to somebody, share the link, whatever you got to do. How are you guys, man? You doing well? It's good to see you.
Hanging in there, man.
It's been is it just me? Like, we've got a lot going on lately, man. We've just been busy. Would you guys, I don't have this on the show rundown, but we just sent an issue off to print with Mark Woody Woodruff on the cover. I think it would be worth kind of throwing this in at the beginning of the show. What'd you guys, what a killer issue of the magazine.
That cover is
right?
sick.
Yeah,
I really liked it.
Super well received too. I mean,
It's
we
black
know
and
Woody.
red.
Yeah, I mean, you guys in the Midwest, very familiar with him. Obviously, one of the OGs of radial racing. But to see the fanfare online and how well deserved that cover was for Mark is very cool.
He's helped out so many people,
dude.
over
He
the
really
years,
has. Right? He's such a lovable, likable guy, and even more so is. And we talked about this. I remember we were having a powwow at the hotel bar, shocking, down in Orlando while we were on sick week. You two, and also our editor in chief Nate Van Wagenen, and we were sitting there talking about editorial themes for the rest of the year and all this different stuff we had going on. And I remember telling you guys that I just can't help but look around the sport of drag racing, and it really harkens back to why we started the magazine. But so many of the stories that are worth telling and that are meaningful and memorable and inspiring and all these other things that we're looking for out of a great story, they're not always generated in the winner's circle, right? They're not always generated by the guy that's setting every record and at the top of every qualifying sheet. More often than not, the real stories and the interesting characters that exist in our sport are some of them guys that have had success, but, have also struggled and fought the good fight and been on the outside looking in or tore some stuff up or whatever. And I just think that Woody is a classic example of a guy who certainly had success, certainly done well out in the sport of drag racing, set world records and everything else, won races. But he's also like, we didn't go out of our way to, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but it's pretty much the standard operating procedure in sports-related businesses and sports-related media is to basically seek out whoever won Sunday. And that could be, the story is whoever won Sunday, whoever won the playoff game, whoever won the Thursday night football game is on the show Friday morning, right? And I just thought it was fun to kind of defy that and remind ourselves and everybody that you don't have to be the number one guy. You don't have to be the reigning world champion to be worthy of that level of publicity and ink and exposure, right? Like it really makes me feel good, man.
He's definitely putting his time in the sport and helped out so many racers to maybe get to that pinnacle too.
And just being this good ambassador, right?
A long period of time. Mm-hmm. We talk about this too, where we've told Woody's story in the past, maybe 10 years ago, but we have such a different audience now, a bigger audience. There's so many, probably you guys listening to the show or that follow what we're doing now that haven't seen issues of the magazine from 10 or 15 years ago and don't even know we were doing it of Woody, right? Yeah. So there's always a story to be told there. And that's kind of our deal is to tell the human aspect and to tell the story behind the helmet or whatever you want to say. So I'm always all for telling a story like that rather than gravitating to who's hot or who's winning right now.
It's sometimes harder, right? It's harder at times to do it that way. But yeah, I'm surely proud of it. If you haven't seen it, I just want to interject this real quick, JT. Log on to dragillustrated.com right now. Click the cover. We got a brand new website. We're still in the early development phase on a couple of new additions to the user experience that we're quite proud of. But log on to dragillustrated.com. You can see the whole magazine for free. We're that confident that you're going to love what you see, that you're going to subscribe. So log on to dragillustrated.com and please join the family, man. Click that subscribe button and be part of this movement. We're a group here that believes without a shadow of a doubt that drag racing is the great American motorsport, and we'd love to have you be a part of this movement as we do the work required to elevate this sport and take it to the next level. JT, what do you got for us, man?
Well, speaking of hot and speaking of movements, let's look back on the weekend. And you've got to know where you've been to know where you're going, right? And the PDRA had one killer weekend in North Carolina. So we can probably start there. What was your thoughts on that? I mean, this seemed to be like, well, as you'd say, a barn burner, right?
Hey, you sound good. Barn burner sounds good coming out of JT's mouth, man.
Somebody drink that there.
Dude, I'm not trying to be over the top, but sometimes you got to be over the top. And I just think that this past weekend, the PDRA East Coast Nationals that took place at Gillig Motorsports Park out in Benson, North Carolina, in my opinion, ticked all the boxes. As I was working on that piece for dragillustrated.com, 11 hot takes from the season opening PDRA East Coast Nationals, I was like running out of energy, like literally, because there's so much to cover. Like I wrote 11, and there's probably another 11 that could have easily been added to that list. I felt bad, genuinely leaving multiple items out because there were certainly multiple things that I excluded from that list. But by all accounts, an event that I think I got to point first and foremost to the PDRA crew, right? This is a group of people led by Tyler Crossnow that are truly dedicated to what they're trying to do, truly dedicated to trying to create as close to perfect experience for their racers and fans as humanly possible. And I think we saw that on display this past weekend in Benson. Having that many cars on the property, I believe 336 cars on the property, nothing to bat your eyes at. A really incredible car count to start the season, especially way out on the East Coast. No doubt a solid region for the sport of drag racing, but not exactly something that's friendly for those in the Midwest or deep South, what have you. But 336 cars on the property, 44 pro mods, 20 in pro nitrous, 24 in pro boost. Massively impressive. A 16-car field of Mountain Motor Pro Stock cars, a dozen Outlaw Pro 632 cars. A really, really, really incredible door slammer show. I wrote it down somewhere. I've got to find it in my other notes. I've got multiple pages of notes going here, but where's this at? I counted 72 guys, pro level heads up door cars. That's a lot. Like 72 big rigs,
the
fast
top
cars.
Sportsman deal there is crazy.
Yeah, and that excludes that. It completely excludes all the 3-second jaw-droppingly fast sportsman cars that are on the property. 72, like 415 and faster cars. That's nuts.
Yeah, and Pro Stock again is included in that. That was a huge showing this weekend as well. Just record-setting runs, like you said, huge car count, and I think PDRA really, we talked about them coming off what we thought was their most successful season last year. I think they're carrying that momentum. We saw them re-debut the top end zone, which is something that we're big fans of here at Drag Illustrated. And I think that they probably heard enough feedback from the racers. I think that's a huge deal for the racers as well, to be able to see or, you know, plug their sponsors and get a little microphone time at the end of the run. I think that that's a welcome addition that they brought back. And the PDRA Live, we got to give a little
I didn't even
shameless plug. We're doing a new show on Thursday to kind of coincide with Thursday testing with each PDRA event for the season. Wes, myself, JT, Nate, our editor-in-chief that goes to every PDRA race, will be joining us, and it will be led by Derek Beach and Scotty Gore, the announcing team at PDRA. They did a heck of a job on the first episode.
They did.
So check that out. It's going to be streaming on our page and on their on PDRA's Facebook page as well. Excited to kind of bring this format in a way to PDRA.
I think it's great for them. Somebody has to be talking about this stuff, right? Somebody needs to be talking about it before and after the fact. And I'm glad the PDRA, this is something we want to do more of. My vision for this is to have content like that, show type content, as often as we can possibly execute it. And that PDRA live show, the first episode, it ticked all the boxes for me, right? It was a fantastic
for a first episode.
Dude.
I thought
and doing
really
it
good.
live at the racetrack. I mean, we got background noise we're contending with. We didn't have adequate lighting or camera rigging. We're using Nate's computer. We had a couple of things change at the last minute, and hey, it's all good, and we made the most of it. And I got to tell you, man, Derek and Scotty, I thought they killed it. I really do. We can turn that deal over to them. The quicker I get myself out of that deal, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
I remember when we first started, I said, so what are we going to be talking about? And Derek, he was like, busted out a scroll of notes. I took some notes. And Ray, I'm like, all right, this dude's ready to go. So
I enjoyed it, man. Really cool. The storylines from the PDRA, man, I think it would be crazy. I don't want to beat on this too much because it's bad news for some guys, or, you know, for one team in particular, but it was so odd to see Jim Halsey go out early, right? And when you have the success that Jim Halsey has had in the PDRA and drag racing in general, it's going to be big news when you struggle, you know, and when you go out, and it's not like he struggled, qualified number one with a 365 that seemed to disappoint him. By all accounts, everybody that I talked to was like, oh man, those guys were kicking rocks. They ran a 365 and they're like staring at the ground, you know, not throwing headsets, but like
that's kind of their typical deal though. Like it takes a lot to get those guys fired up about a run. I mean, the bar is so high for them.
Really, really high. And to see them go out, it's funny, and we talk about there's a multitude of examples of this, but it's actually when somebody like Jim Halsey moves out of the equation or isn't in the equation, even if it's just for the weekend, you can't help but get a little excited for the space that's going to create for someone else, right? If Jim Halsey's off the ladder early, someone else is going to have a long weekend that more than likely wouldn't have otherwise, and it's really cool, to be honest.
Cool for Cam Clark too. Longtime racer here in the Carolinas, big dog guy, young guy, really. Yeah, he's under 30 for sure. I don't know exactly how old he is, but him and his dad raced together, kind of a scrappy team. To see them compete in Pro Nitrous and take out, you know, the big dog first round was very cool, and a lot of cool racing in Pro Nitrous. Jay Cox going to the finals against Mike Achenbach, the mountain man.
It's great to see the pumpkin like back in championship form, right? I mean, he had a little bit, let's call last year up something of a rebuilding season, changed engine programs, made a bunch of program changes to the program. And it's like drag racing's better when Jay Cox is doing well, right? We need him producing sound bites. I would say he's the biggest character or personality that the PDRA has.
That's what I was going to say.
You know, he's the biggest character that they have. And so we need this dude driving backwards up the racetrack to get into a fight. We need, that's the type of stuff that we need. And we know he's capable of doing that. He's done it. And I think we need more and more and more of that. As much of that as we can see, the better. Because if he can, I don't know how we weave this in to the conversation. And I know we've got some notes and a little bit of a structure to follow, but they have everything else. Like, I was almost the PDRA racing, the product is so good, dude. Yep. Like, the racing I went through, and I don't know, this is a metric that I think we should start using, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Mike, because I want you to finish, but out of 60 possible races, right, if you consider a full 16-car field in Pro Boost, Pro Nitrous, Pro Stock, and Outlaw Pro 632, right, 4 eliminators, 16 cars in each one, not in Pro 632, but typically, right, there's the potential for 60 side-by-side drag races, right? And this is something we talk about all the time. Events, sanctioned series that struggle with side-by-side racing. Like, let's see some killer drag racing. 48 out of 60. I went through and counted, and I threw out any runs that were, one car shook and the other car went right down. Any run that I felt was like close, like a good race, cars left together, and it was relatively close at the finish line. 48 out of 60. 80% of the races on Saturday at the PDRA East Coast Nationals in Benson were hella good drag races. I think that stat stands tall in our sport. I mean, I really do.
And the crowds are starting. I mean, they had a great crowd, right?
Yeah. So I think Tyler told us is one of the best crowds in 4 years, I think.
The best awesome. Crowd in 4 years.
The best. Yeah. And I don't know if that means just Galat or the series as a whole.
I'm assuming series as a whole.
Yeah. But it looked well attended. And I think that the class Pro Nitrous, I was a little bit concerned about it going into the season, just to see what kind of health we were going to have in that class. But I think it's going to be strong. I think you're going to see some new guys over there like Cam that we just talked about. And then, to have Jay running strong is good. I think Jay has searched for consistency over the last couple of years. And I think if he's found it or can find it soon and stay consistent, he's deadly. But that's the challenge. I mean, you get there. I talked to Jay. He said, the track got a little cool and it got a little unpredictable there at the end, and he had too much. So it really, if you're racing in those conditions and these cars are on the edge like they are, then you're going to run into some of that. But Pro Nitrous looked healthy. Pro Boost extremely healthy. We saw Stevie Jackson show up over there, Melanie Salemi knocking down the scoreboards every pass, it seemed like. And then to see Stan Shelton, I think, has really put on a show to start the year. We saw him at the Midwest Drag Racing Series season opener at XRP. He ran well there, and then followed that up running just as well and consistent at the PDRA season opener, taking out Stevie on a whole shot, taking out Melanie Salemi on a whole shot, and had a whole shot on Todd Totoro in the finals, but didn't have enough to beat Todd, which, that's another story there in Pro Boost, is to see Todd Totoro go to the finals, one of our nominees for Racer of the Year last year. And really, if we had that award every year for about the past 20 years, especially in door slammer racing, Todd Totoro is a name that would be on that short list.
I think he's going to, we love those Mount Rushmore conversations, but if you had to have an outlaw, if you had to have like a fast door slammer, all door slammer racing sans NHRA Pro Stock maybe, or something, you know what I mean? He is on the Mount Rushmore, right, of outlaw door slammer greats. It really is incredible. And I worry about guys sometimes when they start to tune a bunch of cars, because I've just seen it. I've seen it. It's a rare air for people to be able to be successful. It's like when you're in business and you've got too many things going on. I read one time that you can really only be meaningfully contributing to 3 projects.
We wouldn't know anything about that.
We wouldn't know anything about that, right? And if you're trying to make a meaningful contribution to 70 things, it's hard. It takes a special person. I mean, the rule is that you're going to struggle, but there are always exceptions to the rule. Todd Totoro is an exception to the rule, man. I feel he's building a really strong business, helping all these different teams. He's tuning on Tommy Gray's car. He's helping the Deckers. He's helping Barry Mitchell in Big Dog competition. He's building engines. They've got quite the program right there, not to mention what they're doing with Kurt Stedding and the team they're racing with. And the fact that he's able to do all that and then still jump behind the wheel and be a difference maker and a guy that can go to the winner's circle at will, massively, massively impressive. And it's great because we talk about that sometimes, like we just were. There's stuff that happened at Drag Illustrated 10, 15 years ago that are really, really cool. But a lot of the people that we're engaged with now don't even remember that, right? They didn't even know we existed back then. And I sometimes, my heart goes out to the Todd Tutteros of the world because they had these huge moments in time, right? Where winning championships, 200 miles an hour every time he runs. I mean, that was a big deal. Remember when we were calling him Mr. 200?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a
he
whole
was on
thing.
the cover, in I think 2009 or something like that. But then we put him on the cover again just a year or two ago. Great Rick Belden shot that we did here at ZMAX Dragway. And I always love following up on those stories.
I know,
right? About somebody that has been doing it for so long. And then we were able to go back and put them on the cover again and show what they've done since then.
I think it's a super cool thing. And I'm glad to see Todd Tuttero in the mix. I didn't expect to see 24 Pro Boost cars there. I certainly didn't expect to see 20 Pro Nitrous cars, but that was a really, really impressive start to the season. And I think we'd be crazy not to talk about Melanie Salemi. I honestly think that performance on Friday, those 3 runs, 358 off the trailer, 357 in the second round of qualifying, and under the lights Friday night, Gillig Motorsports Park, one of the most incredible 8th mile drag racing facilities on the planet. I'm going to say the most incredible 8th mile drag racing facility on the planet. Clicks off a 356, crushes the record, crushes the field. I think that was probably the most impressive one, if not the most impressive single day performance in the history of the PDRA. Damn close. Like,
what do you think about incredible. The parity with those combinations in Pro Boost?
I think so there's an interesting thing. I spoke with John Salemi about this a little bit because you have to wonder, like, where the hell did this come from? Not that they're not capable of running really well. I mean, Melanie's won a lot of races, won some big races, won the Shakedown in Norwalk a couple of years back, won the Snowbird Nationals. She's had a tremendous amount of success, right? Or did she win the U.S. Street Nationals? Regardless, she's had a ton of success. So it's no surprise to see that continue. But the performance and the gap they put on everybody, I mean, I wrote in that story on the website, Stevie Fast Jackson's the one who always likes to crush everybody and step on their throat and all that. And he's the one that's good for a soundbite. But Melanie Salemi and John Salemi, her husband, who leads the charge on that program, calling the shots on the side piece Camaro, they stepped on everyone's throat in Pro Boost this past weekend. That was a performance of a lifetime, and you only hope that they're able to continue that. But I talked to John, and basically last year they kind of bounced around with their program. They went from the screw blown Hemi deal with a 3-speed transmission to the roots blown Hemi deal with a Liberty, and that's where they're at right now. They've got a roots blown Hemi with a 5-speed Liberty. And that combination is fast. From what I understand, they were making like innumerable runs on the hub dyno over the offseason. I heard the number 45, 50 runs on a hub dyno over the offseason, and clearly paying dividends. We've talked right here on this show how I think that we may look back at some point in the future. I don't know that we really understand how significant the hub dyno has been to the sport of drag racing.
About to say that.
Like, I think that will be a landmark.
It's gone from something that's like a
luxury to a
luxury, or something that was questionable whether it was needed or not, to where
you have to have it.
It's a difference maker for these combinations now.
I think it starts everything off. You're so much further along. You're not trying to get it to idle. You're not. A lot of the things that you're fighting with a new combination are at the racetrack historically. Ironing out all those kinks and getting all those bugs out while you're in a shop with tools everywhere, air conditioning blowing, like you're not worried about it raining. You didn't have to fly a bunch of crew guys in. You really can't say enough about the opportunity that a hub dyno provides race teams. And again, I do think there will be a point in time when we're looking back and going, wow, do you guys remember when Joe Oplosky, to the best of my knowledge, brought out and like kind of made standard the hub dyno? I mean, he was like the first guy that I'm aware of that was out here running pro mods and running really big power cars on chassis dynos. I mean, don't you remember that video that went around of Mark Woodruff, his black Corvette, the one that's yellow now, on the chassis dyno, making 4,000 horsepower or whatever. And people hadn't seen that, right? And then a video came out of Bob Ram's Pro Nitrous or NHRA Pro Mod Camaro on that hub dyno. Then the next thing you know, Fuel Tech's got one, Modern Racing's got one, everybody's got one. And it's clearly a difference maker. And I look at that off-season testing, putting in the time when it's not convenient, clearly making the difference for John Salemi and company. And I'm anxious to see what the next couple of events look like for those guys. I mean, you can't help but figure Melanie's going to come in with a full head of steam, right? Wanting to right whatever wrong that exists in the elimination rounds there from the East Coast Nationals, going out on a hole shot. Not like a crazy bad hole shot or anything. Nothing for her to be hanging her head about, especially when it's a classic example of when you become the favorite, it changes things. No matter what. When you become the favorite, it changes things. And I'm anxious to see how this story unfolds, how they're going to handle the pressure of being one of the teams that have a target on their back, one of the teams that race from the front. We saw it in the NCAA finals, right? Playing with a lead is hard, right? It is so hard. Sorry, I'm not trying to bring up heartbreaking. Poor Mike, University of North Carolina.
Everybody comes swinging at you. You have the target on your back. They have nothing to lose. They know that if you've been consistent for a while, they know you're going to be consistent, and they're going to take a chance. And that's I believe they're going to take a chance with their setup.
Yeah, and it helps these drivers. Talking about these reaction times and talking about Stan Shelton, knowing that he's got a car underneath him that's that good and that consistent, has got to help his driving. I know, like when I race with my dad, if we get a couple laps under our belt or a couple races where we hadn't shaken the tires or something, reaction times improve. It's almost like you're just unsure what's about to happen when you let go of that button if the thing is all over the place. But if you know this thing,
I've seen
a great
it 10,000
car and a
times.
great team,
you're right.
It's going to help your reaction times. I think, like to your point about all the side-by-side runs, hub dynos, track prep, tires, technology, torque converters, automatic transmissions, and the traction control.
The list goes on.
How many more do I need to name? Yeah. Have made this whole sport more consistent at this highest level, where these guys get a ton more runs. We've talked about this in the past, and are able to improve their driving and improve their reaction times.
And the cars are so much more. Yeah, I mean, the cars are more predictable than they have ever been in history, right? And so now you have an opportunity to actually hone your craft. Where, I mean, it's so funny. I can count. I mean, there's been multiple instances when I've been around a team, right? And the crew chief walks up to the door, the driver's strapping in, and he's like, "Hey man, I don't know what this thing's going to do, but hold on," and then the driver cuts the car goes right down Broadway, shockingly, and the driver cuts a 180 light, and the crew chief wants to strangle him in the pits. And it's like, dude, you told him you had no idea what was about to happen. Like, that is, you have a hand in this as well. And it's tough because that's when you see really good drivers shine. But I think a lot of these guys and gals can be really good when they have confidence in their mount. And that is, having faith in the horse underneath you makes all the difference in the world. I can't imagine someone winning the Kentucky Derby if they were on a horse that, all day long had been biting people's shoulders.
Could win, but could also just throw your ass off as soon as it comes out of the gate, right?
Right. Yeah. And that is a classic
in between.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we have seen historically. And I think that's why there have been, like Jason Scruggs comes to mind. That dude, it would seem, you never knew if it was going to scuff both guard walls or set a world record. You know what I mean? Are we going to see the underside of this thing, or are we going to see history? That was
the era that he raced in too.
It was,
which to me is a reason why he's one of the ultimate badasses of the sport forever, is because he just was fearless in knowing that this thing could literally just do a backflip here on the starting line,
and it might.
Who knows what this thing's going to do? And even if it does make a good pass, what's it going to look like at the other end? I've seen that thing look like a fuel funny car at the end of the run.
Oh, literally. I remember when he was like blowing up engines there for like a short period of time when it was
every orifice, every breather,
you were seeing funny car style explosions. Like Jason Scruggs would bring his car back and the windshield was gone. And it'd be like, what what? But that's the way they were running that program, and they were leaning on it. And it was really, really cool to see. But what's crazy to me is kind of bringing it back to the East Coast Nationals, 48 of 60 runs, 80% of these, I don't think that exists really in any other walk outside of the NHRA. I mean, that's just some damn good drag racing, and I'm going to pay attention to it in Houston. I'm going to keep track of the exact same stat and see what kind of numbers I get back, what kind of percentage I get back. I'm thinking in Houston, a guy would have to look at Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock, and just those be your factors, and see how what's that 45 potential side-by-side runs or whatever. And that's the kind of thing that I want to start paying attention to. And a guy can almost put a quality rating on shows. Like, hey, this was like an 80% show. 80% of the elimination round passes for the pros were side-by-side hella good drag races. And I'm going to try to keep track of that, because I think PDRA unknowingly may have set the bar this past weekend. A couple other things. We got to burn through this. I know we got a lot of ground to cover here today. Really cool to see Lexi Tanner and Amber Franklin racing in Pro 632. We talked on the show a couple of weeks ago with Corey Mahalik about how A-Fuel dragsters and Top Alcohol dragster as a whole has really become a breeding ground for our next generation, the next crop of Top Fuel funny car superstars, right? Matter of fact, we've seen some real stars in the sport of drag racing produced from those categories without any expectation of advancement, right? Not wanting to move up. Corey Mahalik pointed to A-Fuel and be like, hey man, I'm really happy right here where I'm at. I own this stuff. I'm racing at a high level. Megan Meyer, Rachel Meyer, both I feel became real celebrities in the sport of drag racing with no aspirations of racing Top Fuel or racing funny car. We're seeing Julie Natas do the same thing. She's got a big following, sponsorship support. And I think she obviously has some aspirations of moving into the Nitro ranks, but man, I think we can say the same thing about PDRA Pro 632. Camry Caruso came from here. This is a world that Camry came from. She's making waves in NHRA Pro Stock right now. We've got Lexi Tanner and Amber Franklin that I think are destined for Pro Nitrous competition, really doing well. Dylan Voss, the last couple of years, a world beater, one of the top teams in Pro 632, making the move to Mountain Motor Pro Stock, Extreme Pro Stock, showing promise, really running well. Really surprised me how well they ran this past weekend. And we can't forget Johnny Placino. Dude wins a world championship in Pro 632 and then backs it up with a freaking championship in Extreme Pro Stock. How about this? Is a killer class. Tony Gillig, obviously Tony Gillig, I believe, I mean, he's like a godlike figure out here in terms of drivers. He's a really talented dude, and he's done it all. But we've seen him. I mean, he was had found a home in PDRA Pro 632 with his super awesome Oldsmobile Cutlass, but sold that car over the offseason, acquired a Mountain Motor Pro Stock car, and now he's in the thick of things in Extreme Pro Stock.
I'm surprised you didn't buy it, Wes.
I wanted to, and he asked me about it, and yeah, it still haunts me a little bit, to be honest with you. I just don't. Yeah, I really wanted to own that car, and I'm heartbroken that I don't.
Don't worry, we have a Cutlass moment coming up in just a little bit.
We do have a Cutlass moment coming up, man. But I can't really say enough about this whole class. I'm looking here through my notes. I just want to make sure that we see Chris Reaney back in Pro Nitrous, John Montecalvo in a Mustang. Weird deal. Another team that kind of came out of left field. Let's talk on this.
They did well. I mean,
they did really well. Were you surprised?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I thought it might take a race or so to get that deal worked out, but two veterans there. It's awesome to see Uncle Roy still involved. I mean, scary accident that he had at ZMAX Dragway. It was about a year ago now.
Yeah,
I think
right.
so.
Wasn't that at the Four Lines?
I think it was the spring race last year. Really bad, and you just cannot keep that man down. It's going to take a lot more than that to keep old Roy on the sidelines. So kudos to that team, and Chris Powers taking home the win in Pro Stock. We
representing for Sonny's Racing Engines. We lost a legend last year in Sonny Leonard, and it's amazing to see how prominent he is still specifically in the PDRA and all of drag racing. But it's really cool to see his legacy, carried forward by all these racers. Right? Even John Montecalvo made a special note that he always was a Chevy guy, always ran Sonny's Power, driving this car for Roy Hill. It changes things, but he still had Sonny's decal on the quarter window there, and it was a cool thing to see.
Yep. So what else? What else we got from any other news and notes from PDRA?
I'm looking here. What else?
Go check out this article. We need to link that up. But
Stevie Jackson, I think that was a big deal. From what I don't know if you guys were aware of this, and I guess maybe the hardcore Stevie fans may have noticed, but apparently this is the new Outlaw car. I didn't know if this was the car they were just switching around to run NHRA as well. Not the case. This is, and I guess I noticed the cars are different, but this is an Outlaw car.
He's got like a clone 21 Camaro or whatever. That's
everything that was in the
car.
Shadow. Yeah, everything that was in Shadow 2.0 is in this car, and this is their new kind of outlaw opportunistic door slammer. So they, from what I gather, they're going to try to run as many PDRA races as they can, as their schedule allows. They want to run more. There's some overlap and whatnot, so they, obviously have to contend with that. But I think that's the car we're going to see at big radial races or at outlaw pro mod races. So it's cool to know that we're still in a time where Stevie's got 2 hot rods. One,
that
we
were a little concerned about that status after the Shadow was gone.
Yeah, I was genuinely, and I'm going, man, I hope to see him showing up at these races where, an NHRA legal combination isn't ideal. I think it's a big deal to see him at the PDRA season opener, right? Like,
yep.
I know that that's a highly financed operation. You start racing against cars that have countries represented on the side of them, and everybody feels differently about it. But it's a big deal for the racers, and I think just the pride and the ego of everybody involved with the PDRA to have an NHRA 2-time Pro Mod World Champion doing battle with them, throwing his hat into the ring. It brings credence to everything that's happening inside of the PDRA. I think it brings some attention to what's going on with the PDRA, and it's an all-around great thing. And what's even better is that he didn't come in and win, right? Like if he came in and like cleaned house or something, it would probably potentially smack negative or be over the course of time would become problematic probably. But the way this has happened, come out, make some runs, be in the thick of things, be a part of the show, but not, just run roughshod over everybody. It's a really good thing. And I hope everybody that's involved with the PDRA, specifically those pro nitrous, pro boost, pro stock guys, I hope they're all walking around with their chest puffed out today. Tyler Crossnow, he deserves that same feeling, in my opinion. Tommy and Judy Franklin, Will Smith, Derek Scott, the list goes on. There's a lot, Kyle, there's a ton of people involved with the PDRA, and I really feel they should get the weekend off or the week off. That was a great way to start the season, and I'm genuinely happy for him, man. I'm looking forward to the next one, right? Where they go to Bowling Green. Yeah, April, the end of the month, headed to Bowling Green, Beach Bend Raceway. So the Door Slammer Derby. I'm looking forward to that one, man. A Beach Bend Bowling Green race, Beach Bend Raceway Park is like made for the PDRA, in my opinion. That's just a great venue.
That was the best place to race in IHRA drag racing 2002 or whatever that game was. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the tracks that you could choose. That was the place to race.
It's a beautiful place. Those covered grandstands. Yeah, man. It's got a honky tonk vibe, but still a killer racing surface. People go fast there. People set career best there. It'll be great to see the PDRA there at the end of April, man. What do we got next, man? I know that we've got. What else? Are we still touching on the weekend?
Yeah, man. Let's pay some bills real quick and then maybe dive into some no prep kings.
Okay, let's do that. We'll, guys, I want to take a quick break here and remind y'all that Drag Illustrated's The Wes Buck Show is brought to you by the team at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for its top quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts to fire suits, gloves, and blankets, all 100% made in America. We've partnered with Stroud Safety to offer a slew of special discounts and deals for all of you. So all you have to do to check those out is log on to stroudsafety.com/Wes to take advantage of those special offers and discounts. Huge shout out to Tommy Cunningham, the whole gang at up in Oklahoma City for their support, man. It means the world. And I also want to take a minute to thank the gang at Elite HP, the world leader in used race cars, racing engines, parts, and tools. Located in Fort Worth, Texas, Elite HP is operated by hardcore drag racers with over 100 collective years of experience in the sport of drag racing, who can help steer you in the right direction for all your racing needs. Log on to elitehp.com to check out their entire inventory. It's updated daily. Guys, we definitely have to touch a little bit on No Prep Kings Season 5. That's it's crazy that they're already back racing. What a long season those cats have, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this like 15 plus races.
Yeah, it seemed like just a couple months ago, right? I guess it probably was a couple months ago.
Yeah, we're crowning champions a couple months ago.
We were speaking about, you're talking about the hub dyno and people making test hits and everything. There's probably nobody that practices more in that form of racing than Ryan Martin. And man, he went out and did it again. Did you guys follow along?
Yeah, he just looks tough to beat, man.
He does, really does.
The car is consistent. It's fast. I was really impressed with Lizzie. That car, that mid-season crash that she had last year, they were super excited about that car going into the season, or once they finally got it out there midway through the season, and then to have that setback and then have to rebuild and come back. We saw her win a couple races once she came back with Bonnie, the 69 Camaro, and we're seeing it kind of pick up where she left off. So to me, it's just really cool too, to see, I'm sure that there are different arguments as far as the parity, but to see a nitrous car versus a Pro Charger and to see these different combinations hanging in there is cool to see. And we talk about cars that you don't know what they're going to do, whether it's going to make a good pass or throw you off of this thing. These are the cars that embody that. So to put on a good driving performance in a No Prep Kings situation, I think speaks a lot about the competitors they have out there racing. They've really got some top-notch competitors. Even
Pat's
on the
and Pat's getting better in the
we're gonna do an interview here with Pat tomorrow, right, Wes? We're gonna get some stuff going with Pat, get his feel on all things nitrous, door slammer racing, No Prep Kings, and see what Pat is up to. But yeah, he's involved or temporarily involved with the David Gates operation as well. David Gates, I don't know if you remember, was testing or driving Kai Kelly's Shocker at some point last year and crashed it and just totaled the thing. So between that and I think David Gates waiting on a new car to be completed, he's actually driving Aftershock, the 2016 or 17, whatever it is, Camaro that Lizzie drove on the street. He's driving that in the Future Street Outlaws class for the first handful of races this season. Went out there. I believe this might be his first time in a nitrous car also. Well, actually, no, because he drove the other car. Shocker as well, but still relatively new to the combination, and won the Future Street Outlaws on Friday night down at Palm Beach.
I got two questions.
Mills was runner up in that as well, right?
Yeah. Callie Mills was runner up in that, which is cool to see her staying the course. Right. Like, I think it's cool to see her sticking to this deal, showing up at these races. And I think there's a bright future for that young lady in the sport of drag racing. But I do wonder, how long we've seen this level of dominance detract. You know what I mean? Like, the storyline becomes a little bit predictable. And I'm anxious to see how reality TV handles this, right? Because I think it's, now we're staring down the barrel of a third season where Ryan Martin is like the clear favorite, and I'm not saying there's anything that could happen that would necessarily change that. To your point earlier, JT, he's earned it, right? By testing and running the wheels off this stuff.
But he needs a rival, like
badly,
a legitimate like guy that you don't know who's going to win when they get lined up together. I mean,
I think Lizzie. I think it's Lizzie.
Well, it could be Lizzie, and it could be Corey, or not Corey, but Justin. I mean,
there's a handful.
There's a handful of guys.
Justin Swanstrom.
But we need him to get a little bit more dominant, and make it to the finals as much as he does. Really, we just need somebody that we know that's going to compete with him, I think.
And I mean, I think obviously Lizzie, they've got this, this car's relatively new. Like Mike was saying, they tore it up last year in Darlington, scrambled to get the thing rebuilt. Robert Hayes race cars out on the East Coast swooped in, put this thing back together. And it's a beautiful race car that's clearly a super fast car. Bonnie, as she lovingly refers to it. But we need that to happen, Mike. I really think the sport, No Prep Kings, is going to really need someone like Lizzie, Robin Roberts, whoever it is, right?
Whoever it is, somebody
to kind of step in and be like, hey, I'm going to challenge for the throne. Because, that's what made the Lakers and Celtics rivalry, is they were both super competitive teams that you really didn't know which way it was going to go.
A rivalry can't be completely one-sided. It's got to be fairly even.
It's got to be, he's putting in so much time that I just watched like the Larry Bird Magic story yesterday on HBO, and Larry was like waking up in the morning, grabbing the paper, checking, all of Urban Stats, and then he would go back, and then he said, I would think all the time about, has he shot 500 shots today, and I didn't get my 500 shots in? That's what makes a rivalry, though, right? Because if he's practicing, then he's practicing, so your ass better get out there and make some test hits too. But can anybody else put in the time that Ryan does?
It's interesting because I don't know. And this is where drag racing has suffered from that. And I don't know that it's suffered, but it's been a difference maker for as long as I can remember. The guys that race full time and the guys that have a business to run through the week. And it's that, and that exists in every walk of heads up drag racing, right? I mean, you got the guys that are Stevie Jackson. We were just talking about him.
Yeah,
the reason I think
right?
Stevie Jackson, he wins Monday through Friday. You know what I mean? It's not that he wins exclusively during qualifying Friday night or in elimination Saturday or Sunday. He wins in the shop before they've left. The car's on Projects and he's winning because it's maintenance correctly, that they have prepared correctly, they have tested. I mean, there's as few variables as possible going into any race weekend, but a lot of teams that are competing against the Stevie Jacksons or Ryan Martins of the world, they don't even know if the trailer's got air in the tires, the generator's out of gas, like, because they're running their business Monday through Friday, scrambling to get ready to go to the races. And I mean, I speak from experience. That was the story of my dad's life, Mike.
Same.
I think you will.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like, oh, we got a race this weekend.
I had
a
little PTSD when you started saying that, because
I mean,
that's
it's
exactly
true, man.
how we were.
I mean, I remember like our trailer lights. Like, I mean, nothing worked.
Yeah.
We don't have trailer lights. We don't have trailer brakes. The trailer doesn't have a license plate on it. We need to put the transmission back together in the car. The clutch, the bell housing still at Trick Titanium getting certified. We're going to have it shipped to the track. I mean, it was just an ongoing, we're going to have to put belts in the car when we get to the track because these ones are expired.
Yeah. Speaking of being able to be focused on the line after all that shit happened all weekend, right? I mean, wow.
Yeah, man. I mean, and that's where Ryan Martin's winning. I mean, it really is. That's where Ryan Martin, in my opinion, is where he's winning. You've seen a lot of, he's got 3 engines, supposedly. I don't know. I'm not counting this
Good
stuff.
For
I'm
him.
not, but
right?
It's like good for him. Good for him. But it's definitely, it's weird. And No Prep Kings is merging a lot of people from a lot of different places in the sport, stations in life. And I'm anxious to see what they do, right? Because we've seen it. I mean, this Street Outlaws has stood the test of time. I think No Prep Kings is in the process of standing the test of time, but you do have to wonder, like, from a production standpoint, all right, what's going to be the proverbial bottle of Patron that's slid onto the table in the middle of the Real World house that spices things up? You know what I mean? Like, if things get a little stale on Real World or whatever, you just get everybody drunk, Can't really do that when we're drag racing. So I'm anxious to be, I wouldn't be surprised to see some absurd rule change, right? Or something, because we can't forget, this isn't racing. This is a show.
Over the off season.
It's racing.
I don't know how much effect it had, though. We'll have to wait and see. I don't have all the numbers or know all the stats of what exactly went down combination wise, but we'll see. This series actually rolls into VMP next weekend. So
it looks to me like a lot of the rule changes were about like formats, right? Like if you jump, you lose. Red light means the race is over. Water burnouts only.
No, they changed some weight rules on the Pro Chargers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at I'm pulling it up. I found the actual rules here. I think it is, where is it at?
I just follow our boy, what's his name, Kevin Stevenson over at NPK Spoilers. He's like the number one source.
He is. Yeah. He is on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they changed the weights and whatnot, and it looks like big block centrifugal, 2,850 pounds, which I think they hung a little bit of weight on those cars. I don't know.
I found a cool spreadsheet that someone made of NPK career win-loss stats.
I saw that too.
Did you see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could share this up, but maybe we'll get that going. But Ryan Martin, 136 wins, 26 losses.
Wow.
Who's next closest?
Next closest win percentage. Let me pull this up here.
84% win percentage? Is that what you just said?
The next closest win percentage is actually Justin Swanstrom. Justin is 33-13 for a 71.7 or 0.717 win percentage.
It's impressive as well. But
third is Lizzie.
Wow.
You have a pretty big sample size with Ryan there, though, don't you?
Yeah, Lizzie is 50-24.
Wow,
has won. She's won the second most number of races. Ryan has won 15 races and 2 championships. Kai Kelly has won 3 races. A bunch of guys have won 2. Birdman has won 4, and Lizzie has won 5.
Wow.
Where's Murillo on there?
Murillo has 2 races, 1 and a championship. He's 50 and 37 for a 575.
Real quick, and I'm not trying to like do pocket watch or do people's math or whatever, but I love, these things. 15 races, if aren't they 40 grand to win? What's the 600 grand that Ryan Martin's won?
Yeah, dude's cleaning up.
And the championships.
And the championship. So another 100 grand
in
or 50 grand or whatever it is. I think it's 100, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know if it was the first year.
Yeah, but I bet the homeboys made almost $1 million.
If you looked at this, so if you should go by number of wins, Ryan has 136 wins. The next closest is Kai Kelly with 75. And then it drops to Scott Taylor with 60. And then there's just a log jam of people between 50 and 35.
Round
33.
wins?
Round wins. Yep.
Okay. Man, it's
Impressive.
It really is impressive. And I said a second ago that we have to remember that it's a show first and a race second. But man, it really is great racing. Like there's some great racing. And I mean, these stats that you're throwing up here really support the fact that it's a highly competitive environment. Obviously, there's a clear favorite. There's a guy that's leading the charge. There's an outlier.
The rest of it's very competitive.
Man, really, really, really close. And it would be great to see, man, this Lizzie is made for this, role, in my opinion. She will be a fantastic nemesis or rival to Ryan Martin. It's great that it's a nitrous car versus a blower car, right? A new Camaro versus an old Camaro. So there's some cool storylines there. Justin Swanstrom in the mix as well, man. He is leaning 100% into this outlaw bad boy image, and I think it's paying off. I really do. He's got a massive following that's only growing. I think his brand and what he's about really speaks to that crowd, right? I mean, he's speaking their language. He knows the audience, and he's giving them what they want.
I think both Lizzie and Justin, several other Robin Roberts, a lot of these guys have figured out we're going to have to invest in ourselves, right? If we want to be competitive, if we want to do this for a living, we're going to have to invest in ourselves. If that's a new car, whatever it is, merchandise, whatever it is, they're investing in themselves to try to do this for a living, and maybe to try to have the time and the money to be competitive enough to compete with Ryan Martin, I think. So hopefully that pans out.
He's raised the bar. I mean, the bar as a whole has risen, but he's moved it to another stratosphere, and it's really taken this deal from, let's see how it works, or just throw a car together to go run NPK. And now, like, you've got to have a very
because I mean the track's supposed to be the equalizer, but he's got to figure it out somehow. I think so.
Yeah. I think he just makes so many runs. I mean, that's the deal. He's learned. He's got more experience. He's got more runs. He's got more data.
Great combination.
How big of a deal? Yeah, Javi, crew chief, young guy, right? That's always learning. There's a lot of action over there, and I'm anxious to see what's the future look like for the Future Street Outlaws class, right? For that Friday night big tire shootout. We've seen it produce stars, much to the effect of A Fuel or Pro 632 and PDRA. It's a class that's producing stars, namely Justin Swanstrom, and I'm anxious to see who's next. We know that Paige Coughlin is headed that direction eventually when that car is done. Callie Mills is obviously in the thick of things, and it's going to be fun to see who's next, right? But it's just such a weird dynamic because they are, it's not just come one all. I mean, it is. Anybody can show up and run those, run big tire if your car fits the rules and you pay the entry fee. But it's fun to watch how they pick people and kind of start to pour the coals to them. They've done that with Justin, where it's like, okay, here's one of our guys that's got something, and we need to accelerate this. We need to find a way to escalate it, and they've done a fantastic job.
I would like to see some guys, just go try it. I mean, I do. They say that they could go down and kick the shit out of them, but I'd like to go actually see it.
It's a wonder there's not, and it speaks to, I think we touched on this briefly last week, but I really think there's probably a place for one of these type of races. And I know there's some big Outlaw Armageddon, the Winter Meltdown. Matt Plotkin puts on that race, obviously. I mean, there's some big ones, but it would be cool to have something happen in conjunction with Street Outlaws or with No Prep Kings that would bring some of those guys to the table
to try it.
And I mean, it's what I've been ranting about for eons with NHRA is that one of the issues or one of the toughest situations is that we've got our stars spread amongst these 3 classes, right? Or, 4 classes, 5 classes
really,
if you count pro stock, motorcycle, and pro mod. But I mean, in the NHRA, like the highest levels, you've got Ron Capps, over here, and you got Tony Schumacher over here, and you got Erica Enders over here. And how cool would it be to create an environment where they were all competing against one another? Right. I think something like that could happen with a no prep race, not necessarily with those people, but you could get Ricky Smith, you could get Stevie Jackson, you could get Jay Kosh, you could get Todd Tutterow, you could get a lot of
you never know,
Melanie Salemi.
You might Clay's a big fan. I mean, you never know who you could get. Yeah,
that's the dream, right? I think that's the dream. It really, at least to me, it is, man. I love that we're blessed as a sport, though, right? That we have all these different classes and they're packed full of stars and packed full of personalities and packed full of, there's some rivalries that exist and whatnot. And I guess it's, our job to just continue talking about them. You know what I mean? And trying to do anything we can to, like I was saying about Pilgrim and Discovery Channel, pour fuel on the fire. We got to escalate this stuff, man.
That's right.
Absolutely.
All right, what else you got for us, dude?
Let's go ahead and do a script read and then we'll move on.
Oh, script reading? All right, I got you. 1 second. The Wes Buck Show, guys, I want to remind you, is brought to you by our friends at flowracing.com. If you're a drag racer or a drag racing fan, you got to get on board with Flow Racing. The world leader in sports live streaming, Flow Racing provides unlimited access to drag racing's biggest events like Donald Long's Lights Out, No Mercy, and Sweet 16, every stop on the PDRA and NMCA tours, Funny Car Chaos, World Cup Finals, Streetcar Super Nationals, and a whole lot more. If you would like to subscribe today, join the movement, log on to flowracing.com and get it done. You will not regret it. Guys, I don't know what you got. We got to talk a little bit about, we're moving into Houston now, right? Are we going to talk about the fast approaching NHRA Spring Nationals, T?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Sorry here.
I'm trying to, let me see where we're at, right? How about, dude? Well, we got to talk about that. We're a couple days away, or a little over a week away from the NHRA Spring Nationals. This is an especially significant happening in the world of drag racing because by all accounts, Mike, JT, this will be the last time the NHRA visits Houston Raceway Park. It was for a short period known as Royal Purple Raceway down there in Baytown, Texas, outside the metropolis that is Houston, Texas, man. One of the biggest markets in the country, a really, really strong car culture and racing fan base. Stings a little bit, pulls on the heartstrings to think about there not being a Spring Nationals.
They were talking about it in the NHRA virtual press conference that I was in the other day, and is Erica? She was 8 years old the first time she ever went down that track. So
hometown track.
Also,
the Enders family.
We also heard some of these drivers were talking about like say you did good at this track, you always let's say Erica at Vegas, or I think Tony was talking about that he did good at Houston,
Tony
or Atlanta actually, and he was saying that you do good at these tracks for so long, and then they take that track away from you. Well, that's one of the tracks that we performed at. We've never really talked about that aspect of it either.
No, I mean, and I think Houston's one of those tracks that I think was either a track. I mean, I think a lot of sportsman racers, they'd be like, oh man, it's always wet. I end up getting parked in the mud somewhere or whatever. But like a lot of pro level racers that aren't fighting those battles, they look forward to going to Houston. You're racing basically at sea level. The track's fast. Typically a big crowd, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of activations. The Angel family, I think, has done a really solid job with that facility over the years, just creating big events, creating an air of a big event when you're on the property there. And personally, man, I've got like 10,000 really good memories from Houston. And it's weird. I feel like in some ways, like some of the Drag Illustrated journey, some of it's connected to Houston.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like some of it really is connected to that event, whether it was ADRL Drag Palooza, which I think Drag Illustrated was the title right sponsor
Drag
of somehow.
Illustrated Drag Palooza. Clearly that I don't know how that got past the branding department, but somehow we let that go. Drag Illustrated
Well, I think what happened was I showed up and our logo was on the shirts and tickets. And Kenny Nolan was like, hey, congrats, man. You're the title rights sponsor of the race. And I'm like, oh, rad. Okay. But
and then you kind of lean into it, right? Because the place is packed and you're like, yep, we put on.
I still have tickets.
Probably the most well-attended drag race in the history of Houston Raceway Park was a Drag Illustrated event. I can remember that because that you and I were kind of just getting started at that point. Man. And I'm like, this dude is for real. Now he's out here sponsoring ADRL events. Like this guy is crazy, but he's not messing around.
You're bamboozled.
You were bamboozled. That's a fact.
And then my old man proceeded to go Tony Hawk off the right guard wall at about right before the 8th mile in 2009, airborne in the 55 Chevy.
That was a rough, man.
Wheel goes 800 feet in the air and like runs down that like gully or whatever that goes between the track and the return road, like all the way down to the shutdown. Wild deal. You had just gotten a new Drag Illustrated 4Runner. Here, this man's rolling in a brand new 4Runner with Drag Illustrated decal on the side. Again, bamboozling everybody.
Yeah,
and
man. That was one of the best deals I've ever made.
I needed to take my old man to the hospital. He's got a broken back, we think. I'm having a fight to get him to even
he didn't want to go.
He didn't want to go. And I said, well, I'll drive you. And Wes is like, take my car. Which if you know Wes, Wes is like full stop, like probably the most like generous and eager to help someone in a bad situation person that I think that most of us know. So the fact that he's handing me the keys to this brand new vehicle that he had just gotten and was so proud of, was like, drive your dad to the hospispittal.
I don't even know how we got to the hotel.
It was your first date, right?
Yeah, with my now wife.
Your now wife, Alicia.
Yeah.
First time we had met her, and then here you are handing the keys to your vehicle over to some person.
Yeah. And I think she looked at me and she was like, hey, how are we going to get back to the hotel? And I'm like, I don't know. Somebody will take us, you know?
I told her to run.
Yeah.
So that was an auspicious start for that relationship.
Dude, that well, I will tell you that felt like a make or break moment for my marriage or for the relationship. Because I asked her, I remember it very well. I called her and I was like, hey, you want to go to the races with me this weekend? And she's like, yeah. And we'd been on one date prior to that. We'd been out to eat. And I said, you want to go? And she's like, yeah, yeah, that sounds like fun. Where's it at? I'm like, Houston. And she's like, Texas? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, how are we going to get there? I'm like, drive. She's like, well, isn't that like a long way? I'm like, yeah, it's like 18 hours one way. And she's like,
average
okay.
for a Midwestern.
Okay.
Never trust driving time calculations from a Midwestern person.
Oh my God.
Their map is just.
Oh, dude, I was so tired. I remember this vividly, and I'll tell you this story briefly. But so she agreed to go, and I remember her mom, my mother-in-law now, told her, if you guys make it through this weekend, you're good. Like, I don't think Alicia prior to that time had like never been in the car longer than 4 or 5 hours, so this was I'd spent my entire life in the cab of a truck. So it was not a big deal to me at all. And I worked all week. We were working on the magazine. We were up against deadline, if I remember correctly. And I mean, I'd hardly slept, and Thursday rolls around and I'm like, hey, we need to get on the road. I want to be there for first round. So we start driving and I'm like, hey, she goes, well, how are we going to like drive halfway and stop? And I'm like, no, we're going to drive there now, like right now. And, we'll get there 18 hours from now. That's what the GPS says, and she's like, oh, okay. And I remember rolling through, we were just north of Oklahoma City on I-35 and I'm getting tired. Like my eyes are getting heavy and I've got the windows down, music blaring, doing anything I can to stay awake. Right. And I finally tell Alicia, like, hey, listen, if you'll drive, and I mean, look at me expecting this of my, I barely know this chick, right? I go, listen, could you drive for like an hour? Like it's just straight. We're on I-35 till Dallas, basically. Just drive straight. Let me sleep for like an hour. If I can just close my eyes and catch my breath for a second, I'll drive us the rest of the way, So she's like, oh yeah, no problem. That's fine. I'd love to, And we were in a brand new Toyota 4Runner, so she's excited to drive it. So we pull over to the side of the road. She hops in behind the wheel, and I'm like out before we're still going over the rumble strips, you know, and I'm sawing logs, right? I wake up like halfway, I don't know, 45 minutes later or whatever. And I kind of just look over and Alicia's over there, you know, singing, belting out like the greatest hits of Spice Girls, you know, if you want to be my lover, you know, and I'm like, oh, she's cute, you know, and I kind of close my eyes and then I feel the sensation of leaning forward. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I open my eyes and we're stopping at a stop sign. And I'm like, there are no stop signs on I-35. Like there is no reason in the world we should be stopping. And I look around and we're in a neighborhood. Like, and she's just rocking out. And I'm like, whoa, where are we? So, I don't know. You said keep driving straight. I'm like, well, you clearly didn't. You know, like where are we? I don't know. So I start kind of getting the lay of the land. We're in a neighborhood in Oklahoma City. We're just literally, she did not take the exit, which I should have told her to stay south on I-35. She headed direct into Oklahoma City, and now we're in a neighborhood. Like we're literally, like there's multiple stop signs in front of us. And while I got frustrated slightly, not bad, I was like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. And I'm thinking to myself like, oh my God, if I hadn't just met you, I'd be busting the windows out of this thing right now. But anyways, I took over driving, drove us the rest of the way, nearly died. It was a rough deal. But Houston is, and I think a lot of people have stories like that about certain tracks or certain trips. And I just feel like Houston, for me, has been one that there's almost always some crazy story or some crazy memory that is associated with that track. And just like I feel about some of the other places that have closed down or gone away, it just rips my freaking heart out. Like as excited as I am about the NHRA Spring Nationals coming up, I can't help but I have to admit that I'm also equally bummed out that this is likely the last time that an NHRA national event will roll through the gates of that facility. I can't count the number of times I've rolled through the gate there, parked by the little black trailer out front, and it's the same people. It's a great scene. And it really will be a bummer for that.
The tree. There's an iconic tree.
Yes,
in the
an iconic tree in the staging lanes, man.
You can catch some shade, usually some much needed shade if you're there anytime other than the spring or the fall. But
it's such a great place, man. It's going to be weird. I mean, I think we should have at some point, I don't know that today is the day because we're going to reflect and reminisce a little bit about the magic that has been Houston Raceway Park for all these years. But I think we're at some point going to have to explore how in the hell a situation can exist where it makes sense not to have an NHRA national event. I don't think that has ever, I don't know that that's ever been a conversation that's been had openly, because for as long as I can remember, every track owner, the dream was to have an NHRA national event. Like, we're going to do all this, but man, if only we could turn this 8th mile track into a quarter mile and build some luxury suites and expand the parking. What we really want is an NHRA national event.
We've seen it go the other way, though. Now we've seen these other things. We've seen like the Stampede of Speed. We've seen like concerts, lantern releases, or whatever they call that.
Yeah, Texas 2K, music festivals. You know,
these other things, these venues that are surviving or thriving are doing outside of not only a national event but their traditional drag racing program as well. And I think that is something that's like the dark side of the story that we don't really want to talk about. But how did it get to that point, especially when it comes to an NHRA national event, as you're saying? But we've got several of these tracks. I mean, and we're definitely going to go down memory lane with Houston, but Memphis International Raceway, the Midwest Drag Racing Series is headed there. Is it this weekend or
next weekend?
Yeah, this is Easter weekend. So next weekend. And that's going to be the final race at that track, from what I understand. So again, now we've lost Houston, Memphis, and we were just talking about Palm Beach. No Prep Kings was in Palm Beach this past weekend, and they're like petitioning to try to save that track. But it, from all accounts that I can find online, is headed for demolition. Like,
that's my understanding, man. I mean, and
so you've got South Florida. You've got Memphis, Tennessee, Midwest area there. Houston, which I believe is the 3rd largest metro in the country. It's up there. Top 5. Least. Chicago, which may be the 3rd, is Joliet. We've heard about rumors about it getting reinvigorated. But how does NHRA, we talk about these national events, and the track owners, that business model changing. But how can NHRA not have events in these major markets? It seems
especially when they've
got to get replaced.
They've done everything to get near New York, right? Yeah. Everybody, it's fantastic to see what's gone on with the New England Nationals, right? It's a great thing, but by all accounts, that facility is relatively small. There's traffic issues getting into it every year, which makes for some great photos. But it was we're willing to do anything to be close to that, Boston, New York market or whatever. And I think that experience and that experiment, has paid dividends for the NHRA. By everybody that I've talked to, that's a very successful event. People are excited about it. The local fan base is rabid for it. But to your point, Mike, I can't imagine how we can allow there to be it's even worse. It would be easier if Houston Raceway Park was going to go away. Do you agree? If we knew that track was closing,
that's the more interesting aspect of it.
That's the real story, that it's going to stay open. They are just opting not to have an NHRA national event. That's from that's a conversation that I had.
There's a lot of factors that go into that too: fan attendance, racer attendance, the schedule, the weather. How
what did he tell you, Wes?
Man, he basically just told me that the value proposition wasn't what it once was, and that he's an avid supporter of the NHRA. The NHRA Spring Nationals have been happening at Houston Raceway Park for 35 years, man, 3.5 decades.
We've been seeing these tracks though, just packed full of people.
Yeah, I expect the event in Houston to be huge, considering
it's already sold out.
Yeah,
it's already sold out.
I think it's going to be bananas, but is it not going to be hard to be there and look around at the stands full of people and the pits full of race cars and go, dude, we're not going to do this anymore? We're just going to stop? That especially knowing that they're going to have drag races. From what I understand, and I don't know that this is laid out anywhere in great detail, but from what I've been able to piece together via other sources, as well as going direct to Seth Angel, it's a conversation that's less than 2 weeks old. I talked to Seth, and he told me that they still have every intention of hosting a lot of major independent drag racing events. Things like Texas 2K. They've got music festivals. I think there's a music festival that's going to go to HRP in the fall that they've had some tremendous success with. And that seems to be what entices him and excites him right now. And I just really find that alarming. I don't mean to be negative at all, because I'm here to say, we can list off. I admit that I'm not a racetrack guru to the extent that our own Van Abernathy is, Brett Kepner is, Brian Loans is, and I know that there's readily available information. If you go on Brett Kepner's Facebook account right now, pull it up, drag racing as a sport is secure. By I think the most recent account or close to this is that there are 423 tracks, or in that area, 420 tracks that are active in the country right now, right? And it's not an all-time high, which apparently was in the mid 2000s, where there was 440 to 450 active tracks. But we're still living in the glory days of drag racing.
They've always been within a range right there, in 100 to 450 range or something. I forget the numbers he said.
It's almost always in that range. And apparently, according to a post I saw from Brett a week or two ago, we're actually, since 2020, the sport of drag racing is actually 11 good. We're 11 racetracks to the good. But I think it's not, I don't want to necessarily talk about track closures and stuff, because I think there's a certain amount of that's just, we can't change. You mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. Property values are insane.
Yeah.
How are we going to condemn? I hate it. It sucks, but you understand the economics of it. And so many times in life, math is the last word.
Right. But
you know what I mean? Math
moves in around them, and then so it's going to force that track to close. And then are you going to go build another one even further out? Until it builds out around.
Here's the follow up to that. You make a very valid point, because right now, when a track gets encroached upon by real estate developments and commercial zoning or whatever, right, residential zoning, and they start to have issues with curfews and start to have issues with noise ordinances and all this stuff, the answer is to find somebody to buy the place for way more than it's worth, to be turned into something that's not a racing facility. right? I mean, that's pretty much the play. That's what everybody does. And to your point, JT, no one runs out the door and looks for a parcel of land outside of town to build another racetrack. And that's what I'm talking about. It terrifies me that Houston Raceway Park is going to continue to operate for the most part, for the foreseeable future, as a drag strip. And maybe that's all bullshit. Maybe they're going to shut the whole place down in 2 weeks. Maybe. I don't know. But from what I've been told, they have every intention of continuing to operate that facility as a racetrack to some extent. Are they going to have a weekly bracket program? I don't think so. But are they going to routinely use the place as a racetrack? Yes. And there are multiple racetracks in the United States of America, national event tracks, that are primarily used for NHRA national events. So my point is more that how have we arrived at a point in time when a track is going to opt not to have an NHRA national event? That, and to your point, JT, I mean, like if they were killing it and the city encroached upon them and they were printing money, they would go find another place to build a racetrack and do it again and keep it going. Yeah. But clearly that's not what's happening. So the value proposition has to be such that a track owner is willing to fight the local ordinances. They're willing to push back. They're willing to play politics or do whatever they have to do to extend their runway. And then in the event that they ultimately have to sell or there's an opportunity to sell, I think the NHRA, the goal should be to create an environment where the Angel family, let's just use them as an example, maybe not the best one because they've been around for a long time and they've done their fair share. I don't know that the sport of drag racing can ask everyone to just stick around till they're dead. You know what I mean? It seems to be what we do. It's a bit of a lifetime commitment, but I mean, they've been doing this for 35 years at an extremely high level. And I don't think anybody can really be mad at them or fault them for moving on.
I don't think that's the feeling too. I think that this is everything we've seen. I've never seen, especially from NHRA, more of a send off.
Yeah.
For never a facility. Seen it. They've been posting things and sharing content for weeks. Houston memories. We've got a good list of.
But don't you think that is some extent strategic? Like that's strategic because there's a bad side to this. A bad side that a national event level facility that has adequate parking, has a great surface. I mean, obviously, I think improvements need to be made. Whatever, I get it, and that's a whole other conversation. Track owners have to be reinvesting. They have to be improving the facilities. All these things we've talked about them before. We'll talk about them again. But I can't help but see this. The reason NHRA is being so over the top, in my opinion, with all the press and all the publicity, obviously they've made some changes in their media department, which I think have been very, very, very positive. But also, I think they have to offset the fact that like the dirty secret is that this place is going to be a drag strip next April, but NHRA just ain't going to.
And how do you allow that to happen as the NHRA? Like, okay, why wouldn't you have a sit down? Like, how can we make this work and figure something out? I mean, I don't.
Hasn't this been brewing for a while though? From what we know, that this has been. I feel like this has been talked about for.
I mean, the facility. Yeah. I mean, I think this would have happened sooner if the Angel family and Houston Raceway Park collectively didn't have an agreement with the NHRA to run races through 2022. I think that they had some sort of agreement. I don't know. Obviously, I'm just like kind of reading the tea leaves, but I think there was an agreement that we were going to have the NHRA Spring Nationals at Houston Raceway Park through 2022. As of this event, they will have fulfilled their obligation and they're moving on, right? And both parties
there's got to be something more to this. I think
there is. And there's something more to it is that I think for a racetrack owner, it's a tough pill to swallow. You've got to pay all those purses. You've got to do all sorts of advertising. You've got to staff the track. How many times have you guys heard me like the juice is or isn't worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Right. And I think we've arrived at a point where it's so expensive and so financially cumbersome to have an NHRA national event that you have to have 70-degree weather and sunshine and everything has to go perfect for it to be a really big success for the track. And I think some of these track owners are going, shit, I could put on a race that pays nothing but trophies. Don't have to pay out $150,000 for top fuel, get a pretty good crowd, spend way less, have way less track prep, way less overhead. You know what I mean? And that's a precarious position for people. And now, granted, I don't think that we're going to see NHRA national events go away. That's obviously not what's happening. But I do think that in an ever-changing world, in an ever-changing media landscape, an ever-changing event landscape, You've got to change with the times, and you've got to adapt your business model to the times. And I think that there's just drag strip owners and facility owners by and large got a lot of options. I mean, there's a freaking electric music festival popping up every other day. There's a country music, whatever, drink off coming up this weekend in Fort Worth. I mean, you can have a barbecue festival. You can do a lot of stuff, right? I mean, there's a lot of options. I mean, I went to the Fort Worth Arts Festival this past weekend in downtown Fort Worth. A drag strip could do that. I mean, you could use the drag strip as a thoroughfare and set up everybody's little display in each lane and have one long ass, main drag with no traffic and shut down no streets. I mean, there's a lot of ways to use a racetrack, right? And I just think the NHRA, their challenge and what they are faced with is they have to make their events absolute home runs, where a track gets an NHRA national event and your year is set. That's I think has to be the vision. That would be my vision. It's like an author. If you can get Oprah to put your book on her wish list or her reading list, you're a New York Times bestseller. You're set. I mean, literally, you're going to sell out of books. That's what an NHRA national event needs to represent to a track, a home run. Hey, you are one of the lucky few that are going to get an NHRA national event. When you get an NHRA national event, you get this show, this TV coverage, this type of thing, and you're going to line your pockets.
Well,
right?
It looks like this year that may be the case too.
And I hope so.
So far that we've seen at all the tracks so far.
But you have to create that environment. You have to create the pitch has to be irresistible. And I'm hearing it more and more from track owners across the country that it's getting harder to make it make sense, right? And that is, I think that's more of an issue than slowing the cars down. I think that's more of an issue than anything else, right? Is that we have to make sure that the value proposition for these track owners. I had a guy tell me one time, the most important piece of the drag racing puzzle is successful promoters, right? And I think that it's successful promoters and tracks, right? We have to have tracks winning. These guys have to be winning so that they can make some money, have some play around money, fund their own race team and the other things that they want to do with the earnings from the track, more than likely, but also have enough to reinvest in the facility, improve the bathrooms, improve the pits, pave them every once in a while, whatever the case may be. And the whole racing space needs to have wide eyes to that. It needs to be well aware that we can't just nickel and dime these. We can't expect everybody to take an L. We can't expect everybody to do it just for the good of the sport of drag racing, which I think this sport has benefited tremendously from the philanthropic efforts of passionate racers, right? I mean, we've seen Tommy and Judy Franklin come to mind. They saved Virginia Motorsports Park. Mother Nature was reclaiming that facility, right? I mean, grass was growing up, weeds were growing around the towers. The thing was in ill repair.
Now
they swoop in.
It's like certified as one of the smoothest concrete surfaces on the planet, or maybe the smoothest.
I think it might be the smoothest surface on the planet. So, I mean, that is a product of some successful folks that love the sport of drag racing and didn't want to see that track go away, right? And invested in it, right? And now I believe they've turned that into a profitable business.
Yeah, that's your point. It takes both of those. And we've talked about this. It takes that passion for the sport and the financial wherewithal to be able to do it. If you're just trying to make money, there are other ways to make money. There are
easier ways to do it
with that property, with that facility. You have to have that passion. And I think that once that starts to waver, or that's gone, or people start to look at things from a different perspective and don't kind of have the blind faith in the sport that maybe they started with, you start to get things like this. And I think that just the crazy property values right now are going to make this problem. We're going to be talking about this for a while. When you've got huge swaths of land and land is becoming extremely, extremely valuable across the country. And as metro areas start to expand, we've seen this here in Charlotte, probably more than anywhere in the country. Something you built out in the woods 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, with the way it's accelerating now, is being swallowed up by these growing metro areas. Housing, and the demand for housing is growing like crazy. Where are they going to build them? Out in the suburbs or even further, where the drag strips are. Yeah. So this encroachment and this growth if we continue to see this, and these property values are really going to sway a lot of these track owners, if they're not passionate, if they're worn out, or if they're, kind of at the end of the rope with what they're doing with the sport, and someone's coming along and offering crazy money for their property,
an easy exit,
what are we going to see? We're going to see more of
they're taking their turn signals on. They're taking the exit. There's no doubt in my mind.
But we honestly, I mean, maybe this is a topic we can have some people on to speak on this and sort of address this down the road. But kind of went down a negative
let's schedule a roundtable for next week.
Yeah, we need to get some prominent voices on this topic. But let's back up out of that rabbit hole and talk about some of the home runs that were hit at Houston Raceway Park. There's a long list of these. We compiled these over the last couple of days, and then we have my personal favorite, which we're gonna have some
okay, let's start, and I'll just burn through these guys. I mean, it's just a cool reminder, I think, of, and every track has this. I think tracks should be tasked with developing resumes, right? Like, what's your racetrack's resume? The racetrack down Houston Raceway Park, they have a really strong resume. First NHRA 4-second top fuel pass back in 1988. Gene Snow did the deed. John Force's 100th win in 2002. Also, his last win in Houston, which is kind of crazy because it's hard to imagine any place on the tour that he hasn't won in a decade or better. Erica Ender's first national event win ever. It came in super gas, but her first ever Wally came at Houston Raceway Park in 2004. She also won there in 2014 and 15. Matt Hagan's first career funny car win. Went on to become a funny car driver of the decade, a very deserving title, very fitting title for Matt Hagan. Vincent Nobile, son of John Nobile, becomes the youngest Pro Stock winner in history. That happened in 2011. Brittany Force comes back from a big crash in Pomona to win in Houston in 2018. Went number one with her dad there. The second quickest side-by-side run in the history of Top Fuel drag racing between Tony Schumacher and Steve Torrance in 2020. Aaron Stanfield, who's a Pro Stock sensation right now, right here and now, got 3 Wallies in one day down there. Won his first career Pro Stock event, won the factory shootout class, and also the factory shootout world championship, all within a few hours. It was also the site of the first ever NHRA live television broadcast on ESPN, which I think is something that's, as media people, that's near and dear our hearts here. Did you remember that, Mike, that it was the first? I actually remember being there and remember, because this was like at the height of Pro Mod getting pushed back. Like they had, I believe, if I remember correctly, they had Pro Mod in the lanes, but had to go live for TV. And they're like, hey, all of y'all need to leave because we got to get Top Fuel and Funny Car back up here. And it was cool because it was some of my first experience personally with seeing the inner workings of a live television production and just seeing the pressure, the time constraints, et cetera, which have now become a real part of the sport of drag racing. But it's hard to believe that's
we're kind of spoiled by it now. The live, when we get quite a bit of live coverage, and that's something. The ESPN days, man. I mean, it was cool. I think ESPN had its moment, but there toward the end, before Fox took over this partnership, it had really gotten pretty bad. I mean, to say 2013 was the first time it went live is kind of shocking.
Well, and this is, I don't mean to go down a rabbit hole, but you're right, man. We forget less than 10 years ago, you had to wait to find out, to watch the NHRA race. This is the highest level that exists in our sport. And you were literally clicking around on a Monday morning or waiting until 1 a.m. to watch the race on ESPN2. And to think about where we're at now, watching the NHRA event unfold immediately following a football game or immediately following a NASCAR race or before a NASCAR race on Big Fox, like FOX, not like the Ocho, right? I mean, literally Big Fox. It's a huge victory for the sport, not to mention the NHRA.TV. I mean, you can watch the whole damn thing from start to finish live as it unfolds. We're super spoiled, and we don't give enough credit to how far technology has come.
Well, and one more moment that we need to touch on.
Oh yeah, we
arguably one of the greatest moments in Pro Stock history.
I would say that's correct.
And one of the best burn downs, staging duels, whatever you want to say, and just this clip, we're getting ready to show you guys a clip of the classic 1994 final round battle between Warren Johnson and Scott Jeffrey.
The Professor.
Here we go.
Back at the war zone, better known as Houston Raceway
The war
Park.
zone.
War zone.
Love it.
I got chills.
Greg Anderson out there pulling Warren forward in the water.
The reigning Winston champ Warren Johnson doing an aggressive burnout with his GM performance.
Sweet
Martin
Jesus.
Cutlass.
Old
On the
Cutlasses
opposite
are
lane,
good
Scott
looking.
Jeffrey, who used to drive one of the
Look at that hood
Johnson
screw.
team cars a
That
couple of years
engine
ago.
is like barely
was
out
at
from under the
wheel
windshield.
of the Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona.
I wouldn't have one of those Daytonas.
I had
2
one.
weeks ago
Really?
in
And bullhorns
Phoenix,
on it. The
Arizona, when he
actual
beat his
longhorn.
teammate Darrell
Looked like Boss Hog
Alderman, has been
going down
sucking
Baltimore.
himself up
Ugly.
for this confrontation.
We only like
Earlier,
bullhorns
Steve
to
had
come
a
out of the
chance to
side
take
of
a
the
look
car.
Yeah,
at the
yeah, I'm
future.
not
JT, that's the comment.
Oh, I thought that's what you
Dave, you
meant.
and everyone at home will be the first to see the new Dodge Avenger Pro Stock that will replace the Dodge Daytonas by about mid-season. Scott Jeffrey, they're beautiful.
Oh, they sure are. You know, Chrysler's put together one fine
Those are
looking car
ugly as
here.
sin,
It's going to
too.
make a heck of a race
Yeah.
car. Me and
Listen
Darrell
to
are
the
just
wheelbase.
salivating, waiting to get inside one of these race cars.
The long deck on it.
Oh, it's got a long deck on it, and the most important thing is it's 105 inches versus 99 inches, and it's a little bit wider, but yet it's just as slippery in the wind tunnel. Actually, it's a little slipperier in a wind tunnel, so come
In
mid-season,
a
you're
wind
going to
tunnel,
see
you can
two
tell
more
by the
excited
streaks
guys
on
over
the
here.
papers.
Win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
99-inch
goes.
wheelbase.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, the
Can you
99-inch
imagine?
wheelbase he's referring to is the length of the wheelbase on the Daytona. He is
Can you
currently
ask for a
driving
car that
both
sounds
cars in
better
the
than an
pre-stage meet.
NHRA Pro Stock
They
car?
are just
Dear
Look at that
getting
crowd. Look at that crowd.
That's amazing.
And they continue
Buster
to
Couch.
sit there.
You can't tell me that drag racing
Buster
isn't the
Couch,
best thing to
starter
ever
for
happen to
NHRA,
the world.
Looking on.
Look at this.
You see the cars just basically are idling. No
And Dave
high
McClellan,
RPM.
you know,
Buster
on the mic, man, I mean, it does get
making
better
no
than this.
move yet. Shaking his hand
Listen
a
to the
little
crowd.
bit.
You can start to hear the
Crowds are
crowd.
cheering, yeah.
I got goosebumps.
And now Buster Couch starts to move forward. What's he going to tell
Who's
him?
this guy? This
To
big
put
guy
him in the
behind
beams, I would
Warren's
guess.
car.
Yes, that's the indication.
I'd
to
think twice
stage
about
race
messing with that
cars.
cruise. Look over there. See
Yeah,
it.
The lights at the top of the tree tell the story. Nobody is moving.
golly. They did it.
Got Jeffrey on, wants some respect. Now Buster is walking out.
Buster.
They can't use the excuse.
Backing
and he's
him out.
backing him up. He says, that's it. You're going to go back and go to the penalty box for a little while. Both the
Go
cars
home, he's
moving
saying.
back. The
Yeah, he is
crowd
saying
is
go
going crazy with this action as Buster Couch has pulled Warren Johnson and Scott Jeffrey on back off the starting line, told him to shut the engines off, and is going to have a word with both drivers. Now, this is not the first time this has happened. We have seen it before, and the reasons are primarily psychological. One driver wants to
I was
stage
impressed with how nicely he
last.
shut the
Well,
door on
maybe
that
the
car.
other driver wants to stage last as well,
Right.
and that's what happens when
That's
you
how I
get
was
into
trained
this
to shut the door.
situation. Now
Yeah,
they
same.
say let's start them back up, and we'll try it one more time. Scott knows
he gonna do a
Warren
burnout?
Johnson, and he knows that
Ah.
the reigning Winston champ likes to stage
Yeah,
last.
got the
But
funny car in the water.
one thing in
Yeah.
mind. If one
Oh, he
driver
did do a
stages,
tryout. That was
that puts
awesome.
the pressure on the other driver. That driver has to stage within a period of time, or the starter will throw the switch. And if the second car isn't in the beams, the
I'm
red
gonna
light comes
cry.
on, and
Like
he
drag
is
racing,
disqualified.
this is
Who knows what's going to happen here?
these are the
Let's
moments
just
that our
watch.
sport, we have to celebrate these more and show
Who's
this.
going to go in first? The motors are leading
Right? I
up
mean, this
off
is
of idle at the
badass.
moment.
It's awesome. Listen to the crowd. Listen to
It's
the crowd.
Warren Johnson going in first.
Oh, I blow his fucking doors off, Warren.
Scott Jeffrey on may have staged last, but he got to the finish line last as well as Warren
Look
Johnson
at Greg
prevailed
Anderson.
with low elapsed time of eliminations, a 7:07 at 196 miles an hour plus. Jeffrey had the quicker reaction
I'm
time
digging
off
this
the
music,
starting
man.
line.
Oh,
Yeah.
Maybe the starting line wars paid off for the Dodge driver. He got the jump, but Johnson had the power.
He's got
As
a
they
Cutlass,
worked their
man.
way down the racetrack, the Oldsmobile
The universe
pulled
wants
up
him to win.
alongside, and then at about 1,000 feet, pulled past Scott Jeffrey on, and at the finish line, the margin of victory was only 13 thousandths of a second. oh so close as Warren Johnson
What do we
wins
got
the
here, right?
Slick 50
Oh,
Nationals.
this is a
in
hell of a
certainly
drag
one
race,
of the
right?
most dramatic races we
That
have
old Mopar
ever
looks like she
seen.
was
There we
sitting
go.
still.
I'm
Right,
sure
what
it
do
was
we got?
not either of your intentions, but you had this crowd absolutely berserk. We could hear him clear down here.
The kid's just a jerk out there just trying to play his game. You better learn how to drive a race car before he starts playing games like that.
Well, it looked like both of you were playing the game. Anybody can stage at any time.
Huh. I don't have to stage last or first. I'll stage when I'm ready.
Warren Johnson wins.
That's iconic, man.
Hey,
And
you
he's
got to
hot.
give it to Steve Evans,
Well,
right, for like
Jeffrey
giving it
on
back
the
to him a
lower
little
race.
bit.
Steve Evans.
Oh, he is over here. Look at it.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't over there.
As they continue to have words down at the far end of the racetrack. Warren's got
Man,
the lead,
those
Scott
were the
second,
days,
Darrell
man.
Alderman third in the Winston Point, Chase Kurt Johnson.
Man, you literally,
man.
whenever
That
I
was
see
great.
stuff like that, I really am reminded of how incredible this sport is. Like that, in my opinion, would speak to anybody. I think we could show that clip to anyone and they would be
yeah, they'd get fired
captivated
up.
by that, right?
Yeah.
Like what is going to happen? Like, and that's what drives me crazy is that like that fanfare, that's what these guys deserve. Like Erica Enders and Troy Coughlin and Greg Anderson, they deserve that kind of fanfare and adoration next weekend in Englishtown or in Houston, right? I mean, like that's literally, that's what they deserve. That's the quality of the entertainment. That's the quality of our on-track product. I don't think we're proud enough of it. Like,
Well, that's the on-track
that's an incredible
product.
moment.
That right back then, that was incredible production. Also, and to have
Those
those
times
voices
that
on there,
was.
and those guys put on a show. They could have went right in there, but they
Oh, yeah.
didn't. They put on a little bit of a show. Buster Couch was part of the show. We talked about this when the Mason McGahey Bruno Massel deal happened last year and how they didn't run, pushed them off or whatever. We talked about, hey, shut these cars down, give them a talking to, make it dramatic. Let's make it look like everybody's tired of this or whatever. Fire them back up and let's go. They wouldn't do that. Everything's too precise and you've gotten the clutch hot or the fuel level or the engine temperature, whatever has changed, and we're too afraid to just kind of remove some more of the mechanical element and put some more of the human element back in it.
And the
which
human
is what that
element
was.
makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Like humans are the things that by and large are unpredictable. Humans are the things that are interesting. I mean, I get frustrated in stick and ball sports when there's all this effort to, replay this and replay that. And I get it. You want the right call to be made, but at the same time, that was the call. Right, wrong,
Yep.
indifferent. That was the call. They screwed up. They did a great job. I don't know. But so many, that's just to me, that's what makes the world
They're
go
screwing
round.
up just as much now as they did even before the replay, though.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I mean,
but
it
then
doesn't-
and you
it
can't
doesn't do
replay that.
anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything but make the action slower and to make it less interesting, or take the crowd and take the entire both teams out of an intense, passionate moment. And
yeah,
and then
especially
okay,
when one team has momentum,
Yeah.
and then you're going, shit.
but see, that was all like in real time. There was no delay. There was no like preface or whatever. I think they jumped right out and stuck a mic in Warren Johnson's face, and he's about to chew a hole through this gum, break his jaw. He's chewing this gum so hard, and he's like, you could tell he's like fidgety because he's
mad,
jacked up. He's adrenaline.
I mean, he's Will Smith,
and he says what he's feeling, and then Scott Jeffreyon's over there feeling the same way, and just doing that all in one take, even if it was recorded and played later or whatever, and not prefacing everything or making sure that everything was going to be perfect, is how we got that moment. And I just feel like that's something that we need more of.
I couldn't agree more, man. Yep. And it's to think about that happening at Houston and the likelihood of getting another killer moment a week and a half from now down along the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know. It's very. I'm genuinely excited to watch it unfold because I recognize the historic nature of it, and I think we're seeing some of the best drag racing that we've ever seen in the NHRA. I mean, I would say that it is, if it's not at an all-time high competition level wise, it's damn near an all-time high. So it's going to be fun to see everybody in Houston with a little bit of a chip on their shoulders, probably wanting to leave their mark on a historic drag racing facility, be a part of that resume we were talking about, be on that resume for Houston Raceway Park. I'm genuinely excited about it, man. I really am. What else do we got here?
Well,
we also got to.
Let's
go ahead.
quickly talk about the actual racing coming up. Like we've been talking about the NHRA Spring Nationals in Houston, but also the Midwest Drag Racing Series in Memphis. And man, that's another bad deal. Memphis is shutting down, I think, maybe at the end of this month. Is that correct?
I think that's right, man.
Yeah,
we've had some
race
fun there too.
The Midwest race next weekend is going to be the last event there, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Hard to wrap my head around, man. I'm excited to see the Midwest Drag Racing Series roll into Memphis. It's another series that has a ton of momentum and a ton of excitement around it. They had a whole bunch of fresh faces show up at the season opener, and I anticipate them carrying that momentum into Memphis. I know that there's, the Pro Mod division. They had a rule change after the first race, hung a little weight on the primarily, I believe, the Pro Charge combination, the centrifugal supercharge combination, following a really dominating performance from Daniel Ferris and a handful of the other Pro Line cars. But I'm anxious to see how this shakes out, man. There's a ton of interest, a ton of enthusiasm, and a ton of excitement about that. One of the reasons the PDRA race was I feel was such a big deal is to see it healthy while the NMCA is healthy, while the Midwest Drag Racing Series is healthy, while the Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod Association is healthy.
Prep.
While no prep's healthy, that's kind of the difference
racing
right now.
All these things are
pretty
high
really
right
well.
now. Like, we're seeing great numbers across the board, and just a couple of years ago, we were really worried about it.
Yeah, it's like, I guess you can point to a global pandemic, but the sport of drag racing,
that little guy,
yeah, no big deal. But I really think the sport of drag racing handled it as well as any. As an industry, as a community, we've handled it as well as any. And I'm genuinely looking forward to the Midwest Drag Racing Series event in Memphis. It is a bummer. That's another track where we could probably spend 2 or 3 hours talking about all the stories and craziness that has transpired at that facility. Massive crowds in the heyday of the ADRL. Some really crazy moments. That's Larry Dixon had his huge top fueler breaking in half crash at Memphis when the NHRA used to go to Memphis. It's hard to believe. You know what? This is an interesting segue because Memphis, another example of a track that had an NHRA national event for a long, long time and then continued operation, but it did close down. So there were some differences. The track closed or whatever, and it changed hands a handful of times, but it is, JT, you probably don't even remember, the NHRA going to Memphis, but that used to be like a real hot spot on the NHRA tour. Right. Yep, and now, we've seen that facility become a mainstay of the outlaw drag racing world for the most part, become more of an 8th mile centric facility. And that's what Midwest is bringing to the table next weekend at Memphis International Raceway.
I believe, was that not where John Force said he saw Elvis at 1,000 feet?
I believe so. Yeah. Right.
One of the most classic
drag racing quotes of all time.
Drag racing quotes. John had probably one of the worst funny car fires of all time. And he said, I didn't know if I was going to make it in that one. I saw Elvis at 1,000 feet.
Oh my gosh. It's another place that's packed full of memories. I think even our Drag Illustrated team has a zillion crazy stories and memories from Memphis International Raceway. I think about, this was a huge moment as the magazine was really becoming established and radial racing was taking off. Jason Mahalik goes down there and cracks off that 3-second run in the screw-blown black ZR1 Corvette. Threes in the freeze. Tyler Crossnow down there on the starting line losing his mind.
Good crowds there.
Yeah, man. Street Outlaws showed up. I think it was Murder Nova and Big Chief boosted. A handful of them showed up
to
Daddy Dave to the Outlaw Streetcar reunion one year.
Like
yeah,
2 or 3.
Place was packed. It's a really incredible facility, and I'm glad they're going to get a fitting send-off with the show that the Midwest Drag Racing Series is putting on right now. Between the Top Alcohol Funny Car deal, a really strong Pro Mod program, which by all accounts, I think we're going to see a few more cars at this next race. And then, what the rest of the season looks like, I don't know, but I know that there's an influx of cars that are going to show up at this next stop, and I'm anxious to see. I really am. There's some great racing going on there. Last summer, when I went to the Midwest Drag Racing Series event in Great Bend, Kansas, I was blown away. They didn't have, there wasn't 60 Pro Mods there, but there were 16 of all different types. We had screw-blown cars, roots-blown cars, nitrous cars, turbo cars. Turbo cars are something of like, they've almost gone the way of the dodo, right? Yeah. You hardly ever see them anywhere. We see them within the Midwest Drag Racing Series, and I don't know, it's exciting to see all those different combinations competing on a competing against one another on what appears to be an extremely level playing field. But it's interesting right now. I mean, there's some world beaters that have shown up. I mean, you've got Daniel Ferris and Steve Petty and Stan Shelton and Dustin Nelsoni. I mean, there's a lot of hitters that are in there that are fresh faces to the Midwest Drag Racing Series, and I'm anxious to see how the Midwest kind of staple mates defend their territory, right? Because I think that would be the cool story to see some of the guys that have been a part of that series for the last few years not necessarily fend those guys off, but put up a hell of a fight against them and remind them that it's not, you can't just come over here and take our candy, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, we got, speaking of tracks, this has been a track focused discussion.
It really has, right?
And I know Dion's got a question for us coming up soon on tracks, but another classic track, Rockingham Dragway, hosting the NMCA race, the NMCA All-Star Nationals next weekend.
Dude, do you miss going to Rockingham as much as I do?
I do. And I'm looking to use this as a segue to our next segment. Dion.
We're going
to bring him on.
Yeah, let's bring Dion on. We've got to, we're here headed into.
You got something for us.
The last stop of the show. I do want to just briefly, before we dive in, I want to thank all of our sponsors, right? Sand Haulers of America, Holley Performance Products joined the family last week. We got more coming from Holley in the coming weeks. Of course, Redline Synthetic Oils, Elite High Performance, our friends at Stroud Safety. Thank you so much to each and every one of those companies that are supporting Drag Illustrated Magazine, supporting this this program. And we encourage each and every one of you to support them, support the brands, support the companies that support the sport of drag racing and support us. We appreciate it. They appreciate it. It's what keeps this whole world going round. Remember, if you're watching on iTunes, leave us a review. If you're or Spotify, Google Play, any of the podcast platforms, leave us a review, tell a friend. If you're watching along on YouTube, make sure you smash that subscribe button, click the bell to get notified for any fresh new content. Same on social media, Instagram, Facebook, click follow. Make sure you're set up for notifications so you get a little, you get a reminder every time we bang out something like this. Dion, I know you've got a kind of a closing fun question for the end of the show, and there's been a lot of work going to this, ladies and gentlemen. Dion has been developing questions that he's going to ask us toward the end of the show, and we've been instructed not to share our answers or talk about it until this very moment. So the floor is yours.
So since we've kind of been track focused this week, I want to know your guys' top 5 tracks in no specific order, just your favorite tracks, the tracks that come to your mind. When I ask you to think of 5, give them to me.
Are we going in any sort of order? Did I write down? No particular order, but
order. Yeah, no
this
order.
Is, this is our favorite tracks to go attend a race or to participate in a race.
I just did like favorite tracks.
It's just overall.
Favorite facilities.
Okay. All
right, Mike, you go first.
Well, we were just talking about Rockingham Dragway, and Steve Earwood, longtime owner of Rockingham Dragway. I believe he's retiring at the end of this year, and I think Rockingham Dragway is a track that was kind of like the crown jewel or one of the biggest facilities for the IHRA in the heyday of IHRA Pro Mod. And then, of course, the barn burner, kind of redefined barn burner during Drag Stock. Was it Drag Stock 3? Was the first one. 3 and 4 were both pretty wild there at Rockingham Dragway. A facility that has sort of fossilized over time a little bit. It's certainly seen its better days when it was sort of one of the mega strips, and now it's kind of one of these one of the longest standing tracks in North Carolina. That's one of my favorites. My list is North Carolina centric, believe it or not.
That's okay. Shocking.
Another old school track, Farmington Dragway. We talk about this a lot. We talk about venues making a difference when you're presenting 8th mile drag racing, especially 8th mile pro mod racing. If you went to Farmington Dragway right now, you would be shocked or scared to know that people used to run 3-second pro mods every week at this track. And that, to me, that sort of daredevil mentality, and that it's almost like we didn't know any better, or those drivers didn't know any better, didn't have an option to race at a facility more suited to the speed of those cars. No. When you see 2 nitrous cars with flames nearly touching going down through there Farmington Dragway on a Saturday night and the crowd roaring, to me, that was about as good as it got when I was kind of coming up in this deal. So Farmington, Rockingham, Z-Max Dragway, just because of what it represents, to me, the investment that the Smith family's made in the sport, and that is the new standard for the Taj Mahal, Bellagio of drag strips, whatever you want to say. And I know that they don't, in our mind as hardcore purists, they don't do enough with that facility, but the events they do have, especially the 4-wide nationals coming up at the end of this month, are great for this area. And I hope that investment and the Smiths family commitment to racing continues on through that track. Galat Motorsports Park.
Oh wow,
Baby Z-Max is what I like.
Baby Z-Max. I like that name.
It's like we talked about on the PDRA live show this past Thursday. It's like Galat was custom made for a big 8th mile door slammer drag race. And it's the place to race here in North Carolina for that type of car. Again, another huge investment by the Wells family. And just, to me, it's really cool to see how many good tracks we have here in the Carolinas. And then my only non-North Carolina track that made the list is Summit Motorsports Park, Norwalk, Ohio, the Bader family, just because of how that family runs that operation. Clean, well kept. Everyone there is proud and is happy to be there.
Yeah,
they're dressed to the nines in their white slacks, the whole deal. And then the independent events they have in addition to the national event. So
the Carpenter family's had some significant success in Norwalk as well.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we won a couple races there.
Back-to-back years. Won ADRL Pro Nitrous back-to-back years in the old famed and feared 55 Chevy, man.
Yep. So that's probably another reason why it stands out. So that's my list. That's my 5.
Wes, you are the only one that also had Summit Motorsports Park on your list.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I'm glad there's some overlap. JT, let's hear yours.
There's a little bit of overlap. Oh, okay.
I did mine a little different.
Shocking.
And I didn't elaborate as much as Mike did on each track.
That's fine.
So, and I haven't been to many tracks if you guys have. So I just did the best track parties that I've been to.
That's good. That's good.
You know, like
you're
where we had some of the best parties and best times. And Bandamere.
Bandamere.
Yeah, of course, we've had some good times there. Darlington.
Good.
Had too much time there, or too much of a good time there.
Too much time.
Yeah. Too much time as well. Orlando, we had an awesome time at the World Door Slammer Nationals. SGMP, we've had several parties there, and Memphis goes back to probably when Tyler was throwing his races there. We've had some really good parties there.
Wow. Okay. So Bandamere, there's Bandamere
was tough for me to leave off of mine. If I had 6, Bandamere was going to be my
It feels a little bit like you did that.
We should kick you off the show for not including Bandamere.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, listen, this was really hard for me.
Man. And I decided to keep it North Carolina heavy.
I mean, I watched Wes cry at Bandamere. I mean, that just sealed it for me.
Shut up.
Yeah. Well, if that's
you don't got
criteria, that's not very.
I cry a lot, right? Yeah. No, I don't actually. But
no.
But I get emotional about racing things. I really did almost get emotional watching that Scott Jeffrey on Warren Johnson clip because I'm just so proud of our sport, and I get emotional about it. I get in my feels about it. But I think that's actually a good list, and you're right, man. Orlando Speed World Dragway, they were on my honorable mentions. I went ahead. You know me, I couldn't just stop at 5, but I threw a couple of honorable mentions. I didn't even write
your honorable mentions.
Yeah, I did some honorable mentions.
Fire them off.
I was worried that Dion was going to tell me it had to be tracks that were still active, because I have a couple on my list that are not active right now. But I'll burn through mine.
Let's hear.
These are in no particular order, but I also got to give it up to the Bader family, Summit Motorsports Park in Norwalk, Ohio. It's another just landmark happening, the NHRA national event every June, right around the 4th of July. And to your point, Mike, the white pants, everybody's buttoned up, looking like $1 million. The facility's fantastic. The media center's unbelievable. $1 for a pound of ice cream, any flavor you want, pretty much. I get a kick out of flying into Cleveland. I don't know why. I like that Quaker State.
Dion can't figure that out.
That Quaker State little cafe, you know what I'm talking about? That's in the airport. I always end up there, like waiting for my flight. And I like the drive. I always get to Cleveland late and have to make a late night drive into the little bitty town of Norwalk, headed to the Kalahari. I have a ton of memories at the Kalahari Resort, which is a water park for kids where everybody in the NHRA stays. My wife and I have had some very memorable trips there. We've had some late nights there and just great times. And I think that's an incredible facility that I look forward to every year, right? I also had Bandimere Speedway out there in Morrison, Colorado, outside of Denver on my list. Obviously, home of the World Series of Pro Mod for 3 years. Just a place that's near and dear to my heart and forever will be. I love that community. I love that venue. I love the way it looks. I love everything about it. I love the Crisp family. I love the Bandimere family. There's just a lot of incredible memories there. Red Rocks is on the right on the other side of the mountains. I love Denver in a lot of different ways. So it's just an incredible spot. And I think that's a drag strip that means a lot to the sport, like just to the sport as a whole. Thirdly, and again, these are in no particular order, Old Bridge Township Raceway Park in Englishtown, New Jersey. I think it's the proximity to New York City, the feeling of big time-idness, even though the facility, rough around the edges, not the nicest facility. I can't count the number of times I'd go there and there'd be like people last minute weed eating, knee-high grass in a parking lot. It wasn't the best kept facility in the world. There was always a really strong police presence there, like the New Jersey State Patrol, and I never loved that. And they were, real strict about where you can be and where you can go, but so much history there. Jim Halsey makes the first ever 5-second run for a nitrous door slammer in the quarter mile. All of David Hance's shakedowns at E-Town. I remember flying all the way up to New York City to go to the shakedown at E-Town one of the last years it happened, to meet Van Abernathy. We were going to go to the race. The deal gets rained out, canceled, so we ended up just spending the weekend in downtown New York City, like right in Times Square. Had a fantastic time being a tourist. But that just facility, it's got heart and soul. I watched some of the best racing I've ever seen at that track, seen records set, just a ton of memories, a ton of history for our sport. And I love that place and I miss it badly. The other one is kind of the only backyard track that I mentioned, Mid-America Raceway in Wentzville, Missouri. It's long gone. It's now a housing development. I actually found a really sad story on the internet last night looking at this stuff.
Is it Wentzville where Bill Coleman's from?
Yeah, Bill Coleman, the Pro Mod legend, is from Wentzville, Missouri. And that track, it was one of the racetracks that I remember going to as a kid. It's outside of, this is a suburb of St. Louis, everybody. So Mid-America Raceway's been gone for a long time, but I went racing with my dad and my uncles pretty much every weekend of my youth, right? And we went to a lot of places a lot, right? We weren't touring pros. We were local yokel bracket racers and grassroots racers. So we went to a lot of the same places, and some of them would grow tired. Like you'd go to the same place or whatever, but I never got tired of going to Mid-America Raceway in Wentzville. And it was home to a drag strip, but also a road course. And I never went to any of the road course events, and apparently they had some really significant ones there. But I remember going to that track, and it was so big, and we always pitted in the same place pretty much. And my dad had a Kawasaki Bayou, 220 Bayou, that was our tow vehicle, right? This was before everybody had an $8,500 golf cart. We felt like we were balling to have a four-wheeler to pull the race car with, I remember that was like that. Going to that track represented my first tastes of freedom, because I could just jump on that Bayou, that Kawasaki Bayou, and ride around. And I could ride around the road course and all the sweeping turns through the trees. And I remember like being far enough away from the pits that I really felt like I was out on my own. Like I'm 12 years old on a four-wheeler in the middle of nowhere. This is really cool. And my dad did some of the most incredible match racing there. We went there every year a couple times with the Ozark Mountain Super Shifters, which was like a Midwest touring exhibition deal, and also a group that I helped launch, the Mid-America Pro Stock Association. We ran around there a bunch. We went there at least once a year, sometimes twice, for pro stock match races. And I'll never forget my dad being down in the back, had a similar injury to what I do, a herniated disc in his low back. But we were booked in for this race, and my dad had one of the fastest cars in the group, if not the fastest car in the group. And, he was expected to be there. He was a guy that had to be there as part of the show. And I remember my dad could barely get in the car, right? Like his back hurt so bad. And this is before poured seats and all that, you're climbing into a aluminum seat, you know what I mean? That's basically riding on the ground, And we get Dad in this car. He can hardly get in. He's sweating. It's hot out, but he's sweating from pain, right? And he gets in this son of a bitch, this old Cutlass, right? And he proceeds. This is one of those tracks that had a walkway over the track, right? So like right about the 60-foot mark, maybe a little further down track, actually, there was stairs that went up and a walkway over the track, and it was enclosed. So you couldn't see. People weren't allowed to go up there and like watch, but you could walk over the track, and it was kind of a marker. And my dad said he goes, start the burnout in second gear with a Lenco. It was a Lenco 5-speed. So he already had levers 3, 4, 5 pulled, So get the tires boiling, let off the line lock, pull second gear. It goes into high gear, right? And he comes out of the water, and he's got this thing floorboarded for as far as the eye can see. Still to this day, the greatest burnout I've ever seen. He's going under that walkway, just smoke rolling off this thing. And I remember him doing this big, massive burnout, and the place is going bananas. They had a hell of a crowd there. People are going nuts, jumping and screaming and yelling. And then he goes backing up. And as he's backing up, it's one of my just favorite memories of him racing. He's backing up, and, he like lets out the clutch, and his ball starts going. And then he's backing up, and he's going fast. And I hear him pulling gears. Bah, bah, bah. He was pulling the Lenco levers going backwards, right? I mean, because it was still going to go into a high gear. It was just in reverse, and so you could hear the motor change tones. And he proceeded to run like a mid 4-second pass, which was flying fast back then. But that facility melts me every time I even think about it, to be honest. Lastly, fast forwarding to the future, the strip at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We've had a lot of memories there, Mike. Fun experiences in Las Vegas. Yep. And I've just had so many. That place is kind of like, I've been there more than I've been to ZMAX, but it to me is very similar in that it represents a modern super facility. This is how it's supposed to be done. The bathrooms are nice. The concession stands are nice. I get butterflies in my stomach every time I take that exit to pull off, there through the desert and head on that little side street down to the strip at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It's a beautiful facility that's well kept. It's out there set amongst the desert with the mountains off in the distance and the city strip the other direction. It's far and away one of my favorite places to go. And I actually, the more I talk about it, the more bummed out I am that I didn't go to Vegas for the 4 wides, but I will definitely be going in October. So that's my list of top 5s.
Dion, what's yours?
Oh yeah.
My list is Texas Motor Speedway or the Texas Motorplex. I'm sorry. Summit Motorsports Park, of course. The Strip as well. That's one of my favorite tracks. However, I'm weird. Like, I think that they should always run the 4 wides like a track that has 4 lanes should always be 4. So I only kind of like Vegas in the spring. I'm not a huge 4 wide guy, but I do kind of appreciate the way that it looks there. And then Orlando, of course, because that was partially where I got my start. And then Chicago, the track in Joliet, which is no longer operational, but that would be my.
Was that your first ever drag racing experience?
In my adult life.
Yeah.
That's
a hell of a place to have your first. That's another facility that it's hard to wrap your head around going, okay, we've got a stadium, essentially, a drag racing stadium that is currently unused.
Right. You know Those grandstands look unlike any other one, so it's pretty cool.
Holy crap, dude. What a fun. I like these top 5 segments. We need to do this. That was fun.
Yeah.
Are you surprised? Is anybody surprised before we wrap this up? And I think, Mike, we got to let you go, don't we?
No, I'm good.
Oh, you're good? Okay.
JT's well, let's just no. Tell him you got to go. Yeah, tell him you got to go. Well, let's just wrap this up. You know what I mean? I know we've covered a lot of ground and we're already over that 2-hour mark, which is fine. I don't know. I've completely spaced Rockingham being on my list, to be honest. And I as strong of a memory as I have of ADRL Drag Stock 3, I think we should do an episode entirely dedicated to stories from that event. I mean, for those that don't know, Dion, dude, your head would have exploded. I mean, there were so many people there that it was literally dangerous. Like, there were fans that were abandoning their cars along, what's that highway out there? Highway 1. Okay. So there were people abandoning their cars on the side of the road and trying to get in, and they were pushing the fences over. Literally, like teaming up and pushing the fences over to get in the facility. The fire marshal was at the front gate turning people away.
Like it was, I remember being in the tower vividly, and there's a fire marshal guy there, and he's telling Kenny Nolling, if a fight breaks out here or a riot, there are not enough police within like 100 miles to stop it. Like there's nothing we're going to be. I saw a dude get knocked out cold for a Diet Coke. Last Diet Coke in line. It was the last Diet Coke on the property.
Can you imagine how long he had?
Yeah, he waited 3 hours to get it.
Yeah.
I've never, still to this day.
It's not just not a facility that's built to handle that, really.
No.
I think that we've heard numbers of like 20,000 people roughly or something like that. Isn't that how many people?
And it was all at once.
It's like, not meant to handle that. And it was wild, man. I mean,
people, we knew there were so many people there. People were, and it was, I'm not going to say that they were all hardcore race fans. I want to believe that several of them were, but I mean, admittedly, this was a product of one of the biggest free ticket pushes probably in the history of drag racing. I don't know how many tickets they put out in the area.
They came rolling in
hundreds of thousands
with like hundreds of thousands of tickets.
But the model,
we're like, if this takes off and you guys, if even a small percentage of these people actually use these tickets, you're going to have something. And then I remember in the weeks leading up to it, getting a lot of questions from people that didn't know anything about drag racing or that hadn't been, or wanted to go, but never had an opportunity. And now this free ticket thing. And then kind of this buzz built like, are you going? Well, I heard I'm going. Well, and it's like this word of mouth thing. And we started hearing this and we're like, this deal could be crazy. We'll see what ends up happening, because you hear that a lot and then it never really comes to fruition. But that day, that Saturday morning, I woke up, luckily already inside the facility in our toter home, because I don't know if I'd even gotten in if I was outside.
I don't think you would have. I think if you were outside the facility, it was one of the only times that I've been at a racetrack and been like, wow, like this is trending towards dangerous. I mean, it is dangerous. But
Gary
the enthusiasm was
the water
crazy
tower,
because it was largely positive. Yeah. Gary Rowe climbs that freaking gigantic cell phone tower down the way and gets this epic aerial photo, which we've got to find and throw in here because it's worth discussing. But there were so many fans there. People were throwing shit on the track. I mean, it was bonkers, as crazy of a scene as I've ever experienced in my life. And I remember it was such a, I mean, I'm not trying to like, Kenny Nolling, obviously, I'm sure was very proud, and everybody with the ADRL was very proud, but it was like it was one of those, it was a Woodstockish moment when you just knew this is a significant happening that we're lucky to be here, and we will be talking about this till we're done talking, right? I mean, it was a legitimate moment in time. And if you think that event, what it has, I mean, there's no PDRA, there's no Midwest Drag Racing Series, there's so many of these sanctions and series and events, they don't happen if that deal didn't happen. Like that, ProMod was strong. It was a turning point
for the national movement of 8th Mile Outlaw drag racing.
It really was
8th Mile Outlaw ProMod drag racing.
And I think that for me, I was proud of it, especially because I felt the show lived up to the hype. Like the fanfare, 8th Mile Outlaw drag racing delivered. Now, I do think that there are people that say most of the crowd was there because they got a free ticket or whatever. But regardless, I think that the sport lived up to that moment. Like the drag racing that was happening lived up to the moment, lived up to the crowd, lived up to the hype. And if we turned 10 drag racing fans, created 10 drag racing fans that weekend, and that's it, so be it. It still had significance. It showed, in my opinion, that Door Slammer drag racing could carry a show, was something you could build on. And I think they were one of the first. It was, in my opinion, the first time that I'd ever been exposed to that. Like, hey, Pro Mods are the show here. This place is packed. There's no nitro on the property. It was a real moment for the sport of drag racing that I think we will, like I said, be talking about forever. It was when all of a sudden the NHRA knows what the ADRL is. Right. It was a massive shift in awareness for that type of racing and what it meant. And all of a sudden you had guys very proud to say they raced ADRL. Very proud to say they had a Pro Nitrous car. Very excited and proud to say they had a Pro Extreme car. Even if they weren't there, you wanted to be guilty by association. You wanted to be able to say you were part of that club that produced a moment like that. And it's, man, It really is. I know everything happens for a reason, but there's no telling where that whole thing could be had a handful of things not happen. Yep. You not happen. It's very interesting, man. It really is. Well, guys, I think we've pretty well covered everything we set out to cover. Fantastic Wednesday, man. As always, what a treat to get to talk about drag racing and call it a job, right? I just think a career. I'm going to call it my purpose. It's my purpose. It's my purpose in life to talk about drag racing, spread the gospel of drag racing. And I want to tell everybody watching, thank you guys for being a part of this. It makes all the difference in the world to have your involvement, to have your engagement, the comments, the emails, and keep those things coming. We're getting tons of them. Wes at dragillustrated.com. You can reach out to me directly. Mike at dragillustrated.com. JT at dragillustrated.com. Hell, even Dion at dragillustrated.com. We'd love to hear from you. We're getting your messages. We love to add your comments to this conversation, answer any questions you might have, tackle any topics or subjects you might want us to explore. We're glad to have you here, and we're glad to have this conversation. But I'm glad that you're a part of this world. I pinch myself every day, every weekend, head out to the racetrack, and I feel genuinely proud and genuinely grateful to be a part of the racing community. And I just want to spread that and bring more people in this. I read about this this morning, actually, in a book I was paging through, and it was about Hugh Hefner. And I guess there was a toast that he gave, the toast that happened at the Playboy Mansion, right? And it was... I'm going to butcher it, but it was basically cheers to us. They're all out there and we're all in here. And that's honestly how I feel about the sport of drag racing. I feel so thankful to be in here with all of you. So help us keep this deal going. Help us keep the energy and the enthusiasm, the passion that exists in the sport of drag racing. Help us keep that going. Be a part of it. Click like, click share. Help us spread the message. Get involved. Take someone to the racetrack. Buy a race car. Do your part. And we'll see you all next Wednesday right here on Drag Illustrated's The Wes Buck Show. Mike, JT, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, dude.
Yep,
yeah,
thank you, man.
Thanks everybody.
Guys.
Yep. Have a good one.